Welcome to the May 19th, 2020 Council meeting. Members, I'll just go through the roll and so we can record your present. Councillor Boothby. Councillor Angus. Councillor Hearn. Councillor Haybick. Councillor De Vries. Councillor Johnston. Councillor Barrett. Councillor Troop. Councillor Wee Smith. Councillor Schilling. And Councillor Miller. All councillors are present, so no apologies. I'll move on to and I'll just check on the CEO. The CEO, you're present?
Present.
And the Minutes Secretary?
Present.
Present, thank you. The minutes from the previous meeting and confidential minutes for confirmation. Council meeting held on the 21st of April. Excuse me, members, I just need to ensure the directors are present. Sorry for that little oversight. So, Director Thomas. Director Matt Elding. And Director Mavarak. Thank you. So would someone like to move those minutes? Councillor De Vries, you're moving those minutes?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that.
And a seconder?
I think Councillor Johnston did a minute ago.
Okay, thank you. All those in favour of those minutes?
Councillors, just to note that the adoption of those minutes is with the amendment of including Councillor Schilling and Councillor Miller who were present. Apologies for that.
Councillor Boothby?
Sorry, Mayor, I was just happy to second. I wasn't sure if we're doing that by the acts or by the show of hands. So.
No, I've got to go through the process and call your... So I'll go through the process. No. So Deputy Mayor Boothby, you support?
Yes, I do.
Councillor Angus?
Yes, support it.
Councillor Hearn?
Support it.
Councillor Haybick?
Support it.
Councillor De Vries?
Yes.
Councillor Johnston?
Yes.
Councillor Barrett?
Support it.
Councillor Troop?
Yes.
Councillor Wee Smith?
Yes.
Councillor Schilling?
Yes.
Councillor Miller?
Yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Johnston has a ATT.
That was some time ago.
Okay, thank you. Members will go to item 2.1, which is the Mayor's report, which was attached to the agenda. The only interview that I forgot to add was an interview from the Stock Journal to do with the GN modification, crop modification. But would someone like to move?
Yes, I would. Councillor Hearn.
Councillor De Vries, you've moved that,
Yes.
and Councillor Wee Smith, you've seconded.
Sure.
Any questions on the report? If not, I'll put the motion and I'll go through the roll. Deputy Mayor Boothby,
Yes.
Councillor Angus,
Yes.
Councillor Hearn,
Yes.
Councillor Haybick,
Yes.
Councillor De Vries,
Yes.
Councillor Johnston,
Yes.
Councillor Barrett,
Yes.
Councillor Troop,
Yes.
Councillor Wee Smith,
Yes.
Councillor Schilling,
Yes.
and Councillor Miller.
Yes.
Members will move to the consensus agenda. Is there any items members wish to have withdrawn? Councillor De Vries,
Yeah, 4.1.1.1, the Boundary Reform Light Regional Council.
thank you. Councillor Wee Smith,
So that was Councillor Troop.
Nope, not me.
Councillor Troop,
Yes, please. 4.3.1.1.
And then Boothby.
Councillor Boothby,
4.5.1.1, the Barossa Assessment Panel membership.
and Councillor Angus.
2.1.1 GMO issue.
Thank you, councillors. No other items? Can we receive the consensus agenda other than those that have been withdrawn?
Councillor
Happy to move that.
Councillor Wilson.
Councillor Wee Smith has moved. And Councillor Schilling, you second?
Yes.
Okay, I'll go through those items
So we need to adopt consensus.
to adopt the consensus agenda. All those in favour?
One at a time. One at a time.
Deputy Mayor Boothby,
Yes.
Councillor Angus,
Yes.
Councillor Hearn,
Yes.
Councillor Haybick,
Yes.
Councillor De Vries,
Yes.
Councillor Johnston,
Yes.
Councillor Barrett,
Yes.
Councillor Troop,
Yes.
Councillor Wee Smith,
Yes.
Councillor Schilling,
Yes.
Councillor Miller.
Yes.
Members, I'll go through those items in the order that they are in the agenda. And so 4.1.1.1. So members, just say your name and speak to the item. So 4.1.1.1, I need to get on that page, so just bear with me for a moment.
Page 8, Mayor.
Thank you. Which elected member withdrew that one? I didn't write your name down.
This is the boundary reform.
Thank you, Councillor De Vries. Can you please speak to it? And
Yes,
say your
certainly.
name.
Councillor De Vries. Okay, there's a couple of questions and a comment. The first one is, I gather that this was sent as a courtesy by the Mayor of Light in regards to the fact that they would like to see Gawler Council carved off into 3 different councils, one of which I think we would become a part of. So I note that the recommendation suggests that be received and noted, and that you've decided that doesn't require any serious consideration. I don't disagree with that. Are you going to reply to the Mayor of Light as a result? And also, Your Worship, have you had any conversations on this matter with the Mayor of Gawler?
At this particular time, I have had no further conversations with anybody with respect to the Light letter. I will follow up with the Mayor of Gawler and have a discussion with her. But I think, as indicated in the report, we really don't want to put any resources to it. So I think it's, I don't know, I best leave it alone.
Fair enough. Just a comment, if I could, Your Worship, and this is in the spirit of conversations I've had with John Angus or Councillor Angus in the past about being as transparent as we can be with the community. My view is that creating council boundaries along watercourse lines is probably not ideal, and that in fact, if one was to bring water into the mix, maybe looking at boundaries along water table lines would make more sense. So from my personal feedback point of view, I'm kind of at a loss as to why one would want to use the rivers as the boundaries. But anyway, I'm happy to move the recommendation that the correspondence from Light Regional Council be received and noted.
Move Councillor De Vries.
And we've got Councillor Johnston.
And Councillor Johnston, you seconding?
Sorry, I just wanted to ask a question of the CEO, please, if I may, Your Worship.
Yes.
Is the motion that we passed in relation to this matter fairly represented at point 3 in that letter?
It's not a letter that was remarkable, so I didn't stick in my hand.
So which point was that, Councillor Johnson?
So without going into too much detail, point 3 says that, sorry, I made a reference to the wrong point. It's point 2 that I meant to refer to. I apologise. So it says here that the Barossa Council would not undertake a formal general submission on boundary reform in favour of other regional priorities.
No, that's not. Our
sorry?
position was there was bigger issues to deal with at the moment. It was something we may look at some time in the future, and just held it at that point.
In fairness, they have added at the end of that statement, at this time.
Members, I believe that there's a lot of licence in the letters, and I think we need to clarify some of those points back to them just to make sure the records are straight. So we will do that in due course. Would someone like to second that item be received? Councillor Johnston?
That one's coming from this Councillor Smith.
Yes, I'll second it. Thank you.
Okay. So we'll move on and get a record of those who support that item to be received. Deputy Mayor Boothby,
Yes.
Councillor Angus,
Yes.
Councillor Hearn,
Yes.
Councillor Haybick,
Yes.
Councillor De Vries,
Yes.
Councillor Johnston,
Yes.
Councillor Barrett,
Yes.
Councillor Troop,
Yes.
Councillor Wee Smith,
Yes.
Councillor Shilling,
Yes.
Councillor Miller.
Yes.
Item 4.2.1.1, the GM crops. Councillor Angus, I believe you removed that. Look, before I move on to that item, I see it is 9:15 and we do have some representation with regard to the roadside memorial. Now, members, you're going to hear that I'm stopping and starting. I have minor delay feedback in my mic, so it's playing with my speech and my listening at the same. So I'll do the best I can. So we're just waiting for those representatives to come in for the deputations. Welcome.
Hello.
Mayor Lange?
Hello, Mayor Lange. So it's strange not to shake your hand.
No, that's right.
Thank you for having us. Catherine.
So members, I have two ladies here with their deputation, Stacey Nelson and Kathy McAlpine. So which of you two ladies are you speaking, or you both want?
I'll be speaking on behalf of both of us today.
Okay, thank you. Can you state your name and then we'll move on from there?
No worries. So my name is Stacey Lee Nelson and I'm here. No worries. So my name is Stacey Lee Nelson and I'm speaking on behalf of myself and Catherine today. Shall I proceed?
Yes.
No worries. So, John McAlpine, how do you describe a man loved by so many in just a couple of words? A 6-foot teddy bear with a huge helping and loving heart who gave the best hugs. With the brightest blue eyes and a constant smile from ear to ear, he always knew how to make you feel better and get a laugh, even if it was just you laughing out his ridiculously high-pitched laugh. Experiencing dyslexia at school was always a struggle. Building and creating was one of John's strengths, and as such, being a cabinet maker was his perfect fit. But above all else, John was a family man who loved his family and his 2 girls more than anything else. It still seems strange to say, but on Thursday the 23rd of January at age 33, John McAlpine passed away as a result of a motor vehicle accident on Gobble Road, Williamstown. My name is Stacey, and I have been honoured to be John's sister-in-law for 13 years. I'm speaking today as Auntie Stace, because I'm speaking on behalf of John's daughters, Sky and April, aged 8 and 10, and John's mum, Kathy. While Kathy and I hoped that we would be able to speak together today, Kathy asked me to speak on her behalf as she felt she wasn't able to speak, which I'm sure we can all understand. On the day of John's funeral, after the bagpipes had played and the pork balloons had been released, some of John's friends, reeling in their grief and not sure how they could support our family, created a memorial for John. The memorial included a wooden bench seat and a wooden cross. We had no idea that John's friends had done this, and we were so touched by this act of love and kindness. From this day, Sky and April started to ask, "Grandma, can we visit Daddy's cross?" Of course, Kathy, always obliged, just as she obliged with, "Can I have donuts and can I have cups of tea?" Everyone deals with grief in different ways. We had to pry Sky away from her daddy's coffin, and now she bottles up her grief. April's grief is a lot more outward and confronting, with suicidal comments and actions. Both Sky and April, along with their nieces and as well as John's nieces and nephews, are engaging in grief counselling, which has been really helpful. Their counsellors have recommended they continue to visit the site as they find peace and calm here, where in comparison to when they visit the cemetery, they retreat back into themselves. Sky explained to me on the weekend that she likes going to Daddy's cross. She said it's nice, it's peaceful there, and I can speak to my daddy. The friends who constructed the memorial were unaware that there was a legislation associated with the construction of roadside memorials, and as a family we were also unaware. I suppose you see roadside memorials all the time and you never think that your family will need a roadside memorial, and you don't in that moment think that you need to search for how to do that, I suppose. Particularly through the Barossa Council, we've seen lots of roadside memorials that are quite large. Kathy met with Joanne Thomas from the Barossa Council and at the home of Mr. Justin and Deanne Sloan, who were John's bosses and friends. Justin and his son were two of the first responders, with Justin attempting to perform CPR on John. Kathy and Deanne shared that at this meeting the focus was on moving the cross further back, and that the tree involved in the collision would likely be removed from the site, and that the family needed to work through and read the legislation. It was confirmed that there were no concerns with regards to the bench seat, apart from needing to move it slightly closer to the fence, which was moved on the day. On the 17th of April, the family and close friends removed the tree, and we moved the cross as well as reducing it in size. We would like to apologise for the delay here. Every family's got their own story. Unfortunately, our family is going through a lot at the moment, not just grieving John's death, but working through John's grandma's progressing dementia, his youngest daughter working through those suicidal ideations, which is very scary. John's sister-in-law experienced a massive stroke at the end of last year, which has left her permanently disabled, and she's largely non-verbal. We also have two family businesses that we've been trying to keep afloat. As Kathy was under the impression that she had followed what Joanne had asked, she was shattered to receive a secondary letter on the 27th of April in relation to the site and asking us to come to the council meeting today. We would like to speak through some of those concerns, and we thank you for everybody's time to listen to us today. I've spoken with Joanne over the phone, and she explained that the legislation is only relatively new and has not needed to be enforced as of yet. We spoke about how parts of the legislation are not specific, in places aren't clear enough and open for interpretation. And I feel these differences in interpretation has essentially led us to be here today. Joanne did also share that she will be recommending that the legislation be reviewed and updated. Firstly, with regards to the size of the cross, the legislation states 1 square metre. Perhaps this is because I have been trying my hand at building and we've been laying our floors, that when I thought of 1 square metre, I thought of how much wood you would need to make up the cross. So in that terms, the physical space taken by the cross, if you were to create it, needed to be less than 1 metre squared. I've checked in with a cabinet maker, of course, an engineer and a maths teacher, and all interpreted 1 square metre as I had the space, in the physical space. So basing on these measurements, we came up with the cross and we're coming to 0.83 metres squared. When speaking with Joanne, however, she explained that she interpreted that as being 1 metre high. There's also mention of gaining approval. First and foremost, we would, as a family, like to acknowledge and appreciate the locals who responded to the collision and went to John's aid on that fateful night that changed our lives. We personally know 3 of the first responders. We understand that some of the neighbours on the road have shared that seeing the cross is causing them trauma. Unfortunately, our family and a lot of our friends have been first responders, and we understand how difficult that is. We understand there has been complaints with regards to seeing a cross through a window, and whilst this is alleviated by the distance between the cross and the trees, between the 2 locations, we're more than happy to move the cross to another spot within the location to reduce that visibility from the windows of concern. As a family, we are in so much pain. We do not want to put others through pain, but this space is helping our family so much. We didn't simply want to say, sure, take the cross away. So what we've done is we've consulted with a psychologist and an applied behavioural therapist for their expert opinion to understand if we did just take the cross away, is that going to help in taking that pain away from the neighbours. Unfortunately, simply removing the cross or making it smaller in layman's terms is a band-aid fix. They explain that while the cross makes it more obvious that there has been a crash at the site, there are numerous other visible environmental factors that would continue to remain as reminders. For Kathy and I, we're triggered by sounds. For Kathy, that's dogs barking once it gets dark, and the first thing that she sees is policemen standing at her door. These professionals that we consulted, and I say this with a true heart and true sincerity, the professionals that we checked in with suggested that if there are neighbours who are experiencing severe trauma 4 months on from the accident when seeing a cross, that their professional recommendation would be for them to seek some counselling support, as we are as well. As the cross is on the roadside, which is on council land, not on landowners, and the immediate neighbouring space is open paddocks, we didn't realise that we needed to follow up with further permission. Again, Joe and I discussed that perhaps this could be an area of the legislation that may need review to make it clearer for grieving families to be able to follow easier. For example, how close a house is to the site to require permission. All the houses in question here are at least 50 plus metres away. How you go about seeking approval, is it through the council, is it through a letter, is it in person, and what do you do if the parties simply say, no, we don't want to discuss it, we don't want there to be a cross at all. There's also no mention about neighbours approaching the family about the memorial. Kathy hasn't been spoken to by any of the neighbours with regards to their concerns or any suggestions they might have. Now as Kathy drives to the cross, Sky will say, is Daddy's cross still there? She'll hold her breath and sigh in relief as they pull up. Please don't take this space away from his girls. As a family, we are more than happy to work with the council to come to some form of memorial at this space. We apologise if for any reason it appears that we weren't open to negotiation. As previously mentioned, Kathy was surprised to receive the secondary letter as she thought she'd followed the recommendations that Joanne had said. In closing, I would like to leave you with the feelings of Kathy, or as John would say, my Marsha. Sorry. What if it was one of their children who they had suddenly lost in a motor vehicle accident that they had to identify at the coroner's, had to plan a funeral for, wrote an obituary for, and watched their coffin being lowered to the ground? Then once all of the planning is done, and you feel like you're left stuck in limbo, in the sea, trying desperately to breathe through never-ending tidal waves of grief, you find one space where you can sit and feel that you can breathe, even just for a short period of time, where you feel close to your son, because that's where he took his last breath, where you can speak to him, and just for a short period of time, you feel calm. You know that the pain will never go away, and you don't want it to, because you'll never forget your son. But when you're in this space, you know that eventually you'll be able to breathe a little more and a little more. Unless you lose a child, you will never understand what it feels like, and I never want you to. I would never ever wish a mother to go through this pain, or a father to go through this pain. But if the horrible happened, and a family lost their son or daughter in a motor vehicle accident, then my wish for that mother and father is that they would be supported by their community and that they wouldn't have to go through even more pain to fight for the one space they feel they can breathe. Memorials remind us how precious lives are and how quickly they can be taken away. If this memorial saves just one life by slowing down a driver as they go by, then John's life, my son's life, my granddaughter's daddy's life was not lost in vain. Thank you for your time today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. And on behalf of council, may I extend our sincere condolences.
Thank you.
And we know and we understand the best we can that this is a very, very difficult time for you and the family. And I guess that's where council has sort of set aside an opportunity for roadside memorials. Some councils don't, some do. But once again, our sincere condolences, and yeah.
Thank you.
I'll just ask the elected members if they have any questions.
Thank you.
Members, is there any questions that you have? No, look, you've explained extremely well, and so thank you very much for coming in, and council will deliberate a little bit later on and we'll let you know.
No worries. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
No, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Members, we have another delegation. Susan Roth will come in, and so we'll just have a brief moment for us to set up, and I'll introduce her and we'll listen to Ms. Roth's presentation. Good morning. I'm Mayor Lange. We do those things now. So as soon as we set you up, if you sit there, speak over and project your voice into that way, and the elected members will be able to hear and see you.
It's not long.
Okay, thanks. Members, I have Ms. Ross here.
That's what I can see. It's a chair in the presentation.
I was going to speak first and then do that.
That's fine. I just want to get it set up.
Okay, so you
Speak
present as you wish.
Good morning, Mayor, Mr. Michael Lange, Deputy Mayor, CEO, elected councillors, staff and the public. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I would like to say many thanks for all that you do. I have concerns for the late John's two daughters, Sky and April, Kathy, his mother and all family members. John's daughters are young, ages 8 and 10. Please have love and compassion for this grieving family. If council says the tribute does or did not comply with local bylaws, I would now like to show you on USB what I discovered on my journey to Williamstown last Friday. The first road I travelled on was Scott Road, which is a gravel road. Second one is Williamstown Road, a main road, 100 k's, which leads to Cockatoo Valley and Sandy Creek, and I'll let that present. And then could you please explain the difference of bylaws for a gravel road and a bitumen road? Thank you and many blessings.
Yeah, do you want to, can you just work the slide, Joe? And you can speak to those slides there.
Okay.
Okay, you can speak and proceed if you like.
This is the memory that's been put up the late John, and I took that's looking to the west of the memorial. And that's one on the left-hand side looking west. Now, if I get this correct, this is across on the east side. Also the east side. I don't know who's complained, but that's the other house I saw there, and it's got lots of trees in front of it. I had never been on this road, so I had to drive slowly to see where this memorial was. And now this is on the Bitchman Road, which is Williamstown Road, and this is what I came across. And when I first saw the flags, I thought, oh, there's roadworks ahead of me. So I drove slowly, but I had been told a little bit about this, not much. And it's a very busy road with lots of corners. So my question is, I don't know much about the circumstance on Williamstown Road. I feel very much for all the families because of the situation my children had to face at a young age. I just have a question, please explain.
Thank you for that. I'll ask the CEO to explain the policies.
It's very simple. The same rules apply to whatever road, and the photos in that one, as you know, Mr Mayor, we're currently following that one up as well as a couple of others. So that is also non-compliant.
Members, any questions that you may have? No. Thank you very much. That was, you explained extremely
Your Worship,
well.
I have a question.
I can assure you that Council does sympathise with those unfortunate circumstances, especially road trauma and the consequences of all of that. So thanks very much for coming along. And I hope that explains there was some oversight and there is the same policy for all areas. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So, Councillor Johnston.
Oh, hang on, sorry. Councillor Johnston, you have a question?
Just of the CEO, I just didn't hear what he said. It faded out. Can you repeat that, please?
Yeah, look, the CEO's explanation was that we have the same policy for all road services, whether it be sealed or unsealed. That's been an unfortunate oversight, and that's being addressed at this particular time as well. Thank you. Members, we have one more delegation, and I think we'll do that in a block, and then I'll get a mover and a seconder to accept these delegations when they proceed. Deputations.
Just up to the left of the mirror. Ready to go.
Mayor Bimlangi, we'll do those things.
We did. If we did welcome.
How do I pronounce your names?
John.
Thank you. Take a seat. I'll just introduce you. Members, I have Mr. John Tillett here with his deputation, so I'll hand over to you, sir. So if you speak and project your voice out into the room, they'll be able to, the elected members will be able to hear and see you.
Well, to Mayor Lange, elected councillors and members of the Barossa staff of the Barossa Council, May I start by the presentation by saying that I appreciate the opportunity extended to me to talk to Council on what has become an emotive issue for the residents of Gottwald Road, Williamstown and surrounding roads. I should start by introducing myself. My name is John Gillette, and with my wife Irina, we've been residents of Williamstown since 1990. I was until retirement in 2014 the director of a major research facility at the University of Adelaide, and prior to that appointment I'd spent 27 years at the Defence Science and Technology Organisation, Salisbury. Irina and I have 4 children and 8 grandchildren. Our move to Williamstown was prompted by the want to have a more peaceful, less populated place to live. We have been very fortunate living in this rural location. It offers serenity, space, security, knowing that the neighbours all seem to look after each other in times of need. The issue that I wish to speak to today is the erection of a memorial to the motorcyclist from Kersbrook who smashed into a tree on Gottwald Road, Williamstown, on the evening of the 24th of January and died as a result of the injuries he sustained. The tragedy resulting from this horrific event has been felt by all of the local residents. The grief and the trauma that many of the residents have experienced might seem unrealistic, but be assured it really is real. The grief has had impact in many ways, and as the demographic of Gottwald Road community ranges from school children through to those of us in our 70s, the impact has ranged from anxiety to depression. The constant reminder of the event and its impact of it is reinforced every time we leave our properties, to travel to Williamstown or to go for the walks that we used to enjoy, because the constant reminder of the memorial brings back the vivid memories of that night in January, when we were witness to the aftermath of the accident, all lit up by the numerous ambulances, police vehicles and local CFS. The tragic event came to an end well after midnight when the coroner's van removed the deceased, but for many there is a lingering of sorrow and sadness. The erection of the memorial, be it compliant or not, to the deceased motorcyclist has and continues to have impact on the community on and around Gottwald Road. It has become a constant reminder of the trauma they experienced on that night in January. Initially, there was concern that the memorial in the form of a 2-metre high wooden cross posed a danger to passing traffic. It was placed and concreted into the ground right on the edge of the graded surface of the road. I believe Council asked for it to be moved, and so it was eventually moved a couple of metres from the original position and concreted into the ground there. It is debatable as to whether it has improved the issue of safety, as it remains a distraction to traffic driving in both directions on Gottwald Road. In addition, an old wooden pew to provide a place to sit and contemplate the memorial has added to the clutter of jars, a motorcycle wheel chained to the cross, and beer bottles that adorn the site. A small garden has also been planted near the cross. More recently, LED solar lights in the shape of flowers have been placed around the cross. When they come on after dark, it becomes another distraction to motorists. The dumping of old furniture and rubbish on the roadside would normally be subject to a fine for littering and possibly a fee from council to remove it. Gottwald Road is not a wide thoroughfare. When cars are parked on either side of the road, as often been the case when groups have stopped to pay homage or to carry out photo shoots for the state and local newspapers, the safety of those people, often accompanied by small children, is at risk in the evening and after dark. In the last 30 years, there's only been 2 other accidents of any consequence on Gottwald Road, but luckily no major injuries were suffered as a result. The resultant action from one saw the removal of 2 300-year-old river red gums very near the site of the recent event to remove the S-bend in the road. The S-bend is still there, but the vision on Gottwald Road was improved. The other accident was a car that toppled into the culvert a further 100 metres along the road. The culvert still remains a hazard as no protective railing has been put in place. Both these accidents occurred in registered vehicles and speed was thought to be the major contributing factor. The residents of Gottwald Road that I have had personal and confidential discussions with are not the few complainants to council that have been referred to in the public press. They are many, and for the very reason that they have feared condemnation and or retaliation from the emotions brought forward by those in favour of the memorial, I've chosen to speak on their behalf. These people are and have been since they moved into and around Gottwald Road exemplary members of the Barossa and Williamstown Township. Many are employed in or own industries and businesses in and around the Barossa. The overwhelming number of people that I have spoken to over the last couple of months agree that the memorial to a deceased person is very much a private matter for those closest to the deceased. Under the policy guidelines of the Barossa Council and with request to and subsequent granting of permission by the Barossa Council, memorials can be placed in public parks or cemeteries, but placement of them on the sides of public roads brings with it a number of special conditions to minimise distraction to road users, which can create a safety issue. In this case, it has and remains a distraction to the residents and terrible reminder of the incident which has had a continuing effect on the residents of and around Gottwald Road. Perhaps a small cross placed near the scene of the accident would be more appropriate as a reminder of where the accident occurred, and it would have had little impact on the people moving past the site. Just on a personal note from myself, I must relate the abuse and condemnation that was directed at me as a result of an article in the Advertiser Saturday, May 2nd, in which me and my wife were named without our permission. My wife's phone started ringing early that Saturday with callers abusing and condemning me as non-Christian and far more disturbing threats to me and my property. As a result, on the 4th of May, we had Telstra change the number of my wife's phone. The Advertiser prides itself on its integrity, but it seems that its reporters will do almost anything to get a sensational story. In this instance, the Advertiser's own poll showed that the overwhelming response to that article was in favour of the residents of Gottwald Road. The disclosure of our names is a matter for the Advertiser and at the moment is in the hands of our solicitor. So my deputation today is a plea to Council to direct the erectors of the memorial to remove it and re-site it in the privacy of their property where it can remain sacred to them and be cared for by them. As I understand, they've already been given permission to take the remains of the tree the motorcyclist hit to keep as a memento of this horrific event. Under the guidelines of Council's own policy, memorials in public land within the Barossa, are allowed following the approval of application to do so. The policy has been well constructed and complied with it and will bring praise to Council for its foresight. The Barossa is not only a destination in South Australia but a pathway to north and east, and while it is a reasonably low rates of deaths through motor accidents, I'm sure that the residents of the Barossa don't want to see monuments of large proportions placed in front of their houses, excuse me, be they rural or residential properties. When debating the issue, I ask that Council give thought to how they would feel about large memorials being erected on their boundary fence that certainly will not add to the ambience or the value of their properties. Furthermore, it will be assumed that the landowner's approval was given, as has been the case in this one. I thank the Mayor and the councillors for allowing this to be heard. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I'll just ask if the elected members have any questions and I'll put those questions to you. Any questions from any of the elected members? Mr. Gillette, it seems that you've presented extremely well and thank you for giving the time and yes, unfortunate the media has taken a bit of liberty and we sympathise with you in that respect because that's really not what you need to have to go through, you and your wife. So thank you very much and we will give that
copies for you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Terrific.
Thank you. We won't take that.
Russell, if you...
Your Worship, do you need someone to move? Do you need someone to move the receipt or the acknowledgement of the deputation? Please. Yes, I'll move that way, please.
Will someone just put a note there also? A seconder? Thank you. So I have Councillor Johnson has moved the deputations be received and seconded by Councillor Weiss-Smith. Councillor Boothby, did you want to make a comment?
No, I was trying to establish we need to use the ATT in the chat for moving and seconding things because it's getting really confusing about how we're actually proceeding. So that my understanding is the correct thing is to use ATT in the chat if you want to move or second something.
That is correct. So just, yeah. As far as the seconding, moving and seconding, ATT will bring it up and I'll be reminded where you all are in the list and we'll go from there. Councillor Wee Smith?
Yeah, that wasn't me that seconded that motion. I think it was Councillor Troop.
Oh, sorry about that. Okay.
Yeah, it was.
Okay. Councillor Troop? Very good. Any further comments? If not, I'll put the motion that the deputations be received and noted. All those in favour, I'll go through the list. Deputy Mayor Boothby?
Yes.
Councillor Angus?
Yes.
Councillor Hearn?
Yes.
Councillor Hayden?
Yes.
Councillor DeBreeze?
Yes.
Councillor Johnston?
Yes.
Councillor Barrett?
Yes.
Councillor Troop?
Yes.
Councillor Wee Smith?
Yes.
Councillor Schilling?
Yes.
Councillor Miller?
Yes.
So that motion that the deputations be received and noted is carried. We have another visitor to the meeting at 10 o'clock, but we'll resume with the consensus agenda 4.2.1.1. That's the GM crops. Councillor Angus.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, Councillor Angus speaking. I withdrew this because I believe it is going to become a very contentious topical issue, and the sooner we can get some feedback from industry bodies who may or may not be affected, the better. So I'm suggesting we write, Mr. McCarthy actually sent me an email yesterday with a very appropriate recommendation that we do circularise BGWA, RDA, various cropping organisations around the district to just start to get their feedback about this, because I think the government has very carefully passed the buck, and we need to be on the front foot, not the back foot. Mayor, can I suggest that the remaining consensus items be moved as one block at the end of the explaining of our consensus items? Just a suggestion. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you. CEO.
Mr. Mayor, no, you need to deal with each the one on its own merit, and we're just sharing the alternate resolution from Councillor Angus, 44211.
Yes, Councillor Angus, I hear your suggestion, but yes, we have to do it as individual motions, unfortunately, rightly or wrongly.
Okay, I'll move that 4.2.1.1 be received, but I don't know whether Martin has the recommendation that he gave me yesterday to hand that we can have a look at.
We're just getting that up, but Mr. Mayor, Councillor Wee Smith.
Councillor Wee Smith.
Yeah, I'll wait to see the recommendation, but I think just further to Councillor Angus's comments there, if we're going to liaise with the various industry groups, which I think is absolutely essential in this case, I think we also need to extend that conversation to our neighbouring councils. Obviously, if we're going to pursue this matter, we need to be aware of what our neighbouring councils are doing, I think, to make an informed decision going forward.
Thank you. Councillor Hearn.
Thanks, Mayor. I was just going to endorse Councillor Angus's remarks and just think that we should really be wary of what's going on and get as much information as we can.
Thank you. So, Councillor Angus, that motion is up. Is that as you requested?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. That's the highlighted bit.
In grey.
Yep.
In grey.
In grey, yes, highlighted in grey. I'm happy to move that.
A seconder?
Sorry, we've got Councillor Johnston.
Councillor Johnston. Are you seconding it, or you want to make a comment?
I think someone had already seconded. I just wanted to ask one simple question. Can we have a report back to the chamber about the kinds of crops that are likely to be planted in response to a relaxation of this particular the banning of GMO crops? The reason why I ask is because the run-on consequences are important to this discussion. I'd like to know what crops are likely to be planted in response, please.
I think that all that detail needs to be in the report, so we've got a full understanding of what we are agreeing or not agreeing to. Councillor Wee-Smith, I think your suggestion, whilst I don't believe it's still in the motion, but I understand the intent of that, and I think we would just, as a formality, contact our adjoining councils with respect to the type of cropping that happens across our boundaries. I don't believe I'd have a seconder. Okay, Councillor Wee-Smith.
I thought I did, Mayor. But...
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so Councillor Hearn, you seconding?
Yes.
Councillor Wee-Smith, you will wish to speak?
Yes, I'd like to amend the motion to include our neighbouring councils.
Okay. Are you all happy to have that added to that motion, Councillor Angus?
Yes, I'm happy with that.
Okay.
Can I make a comment while I've got you, just in relation to Councillor Johnston's comments? The only crop that is being planted at the moment is canola, or the GM crop, but I think there is grapevine material that is ready or in the wings that may well be planted, and I'm not suggesting that this is a bad thing. We just need to be ready, and our industries need to be informed. And I think canola is just the first cab off the rank, and I heard Minister Whetstone say, that this actually now applies to all GM crops as they come online.
Thank you. Councillor Hearn, are you happy to have that added to as a seconder of that motion by Councillor Angus?
I am, Mayor, yes.
Any further comments, questions? Councillor Angus, do you wish to close the debate, or?
No, thank you, Mayor.
Okay. We'll move through. Councillor Boothby, your
Yes.
indication? CEO.
Hi everyone, just we believe the online is not showing the revised resolution. Yeah. Project. I've got to project, sorry. So I'm just going to read it out so everybody is clear on what we're doing, and the public as well. The Council instruct the Chief Executive Officer to write to the relevant industry bodies, including BGWA, Barossa Tourism, RDA, Gawler, Light, Adelaide Plains, agricultural bureaus, SA primary producers, and our neighbouring councils, to seek their views as to the question of genetically modified crops and report back to the council once responses have been received.
Councillor Angus, okay with that?
Happy with that. Thank you, Mayor.
Councillor Hearn?
Yes, Mayor, happy.
Thank you. Please indicate your support or not with regard to that motion. Deputy Mayor Boothby?
Yes.
Councillor Angus?
Yes.
Councillor Hearn?
Yes.
Councillor Haybick?
Yes.
Councillor De Vries?
Yes.
Councillor Johnston?
Yes.
Councillor Barrett?
Yes.
Councillor Troop?
Yes.
Councillor Wee Smith?
Yes.
Councillor Schilling?
Yes.
Councillor Miller?
Yes.
That motion is carried.
Your Worship, can I make a comment?
Yes.
If you could pass this on to the CEO, the feed that's going out to the public is delayed probably by about anything up to a minute. So I suspect that at the time that we actually vote, it will actually be on the screen. What he's saying, or what was being identified, was that it's not on the screen as we were actually talking, but our voices were actually also going to be delayed by about a minute.
Thank you. Members, it's 10 a.m. and we have Mr. Simon Milcock from the Legatus Group who's visiting the meeting. So we'll just arrange for him to come in and make his presentation. You'll be aware that there is a report later on in the agenda with regard to the business plan and budget for the Legatus Group, which is formerly the Central Local Government Region for 2020-2021. We'll just see if Mr. Milcock's there. Is he there?
Good morning, Mayor. I hope you can hear me.
Hello?
Yes, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, there you are.
Excellent. Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to try and share my screen, so I'll see how that goes. I'm just checking to see if that's come up on your. Has that come up on your screen?
No, Simon.
No. Okay. It was a.
You do your presentation and I'll go and grab the one you sent me.
Excellent. So, firstly, thank you for the opportunity. The Legatus Group needs to prepare an annual business plan, linking back to the core activities for our strategic operations and our organisational requirements. There's a need to consult with the constituent councils prior to adopting or amending that annual business plan and ensuring that the business plan is in accordance with the Act. And we must, before the 30th of April each year, prepare and submit a draft budget to our constituent councils for the ensuing financial year. And again, that needs endorsement by the constituent councils. And I think you have a report going to your meeting later today. I wanted to perhaps touch on what we've been undertaking this year and where that's moving into for next financial year. I'll just touch on what the structure is. I'll just touch on the structure of the organisation. We have the board, of which the mayor is for your council is the member. We have an audit and risk committee, and we also have a management group, which is the it should be page 3. Whoever's controlling the slide. So we have an audit and risk management committee. We have a management group, which is the CEOs, and I'd certainly like to acknowledge the work Martin McCarthy has done in supporting that group. A road and transport infrastructure advisory committee, and again, I acknowledge Steve Keisler from the council for his work on that advisory committee. And we have a community wastewater management committee, and we actually have a project officer, which is partially funded by the LGA. and most recently was set up a Visitor Information Services Advisory Committee, and we have Joe Seabrook from the Barossa Council on that. Our budget this year is probably going to come in around $700,000. The individual council contributions to that is just over 11,000, and we are the lowest amount of member contributions of the regional LGAs, and traditionally membership across the 15 councils has worked out to about 25% of our annual budget. The other funding comes in from grants and also via the LGA through a number of various streams, and most notably was the rubber royalties, which was the largest contributor through the LGA, but that ceases as of July this year. So as such, there's likely to be a reduced income, but we have, as noted by the board, noted by the management group and others, a accumulated surplus and retained earnings, which is going to be able to be utilised over the next couple of years for a number of projects. We've been active in lobbying, and I've got a letter here in front of me from the Honourable David Littleproud, the Minister, which was certainly one of the things we've undertaken to support our 15 member councils, was to ensure they were all eligible for drought funding, undertaking some wellbeing projects and looking at the future drought fund, and we might touch on that a little bit later on. Been active very much in the rating equity, and certainly that's some discussions which are occurring now through SAROC with the state government, and also been quite engaged in the last 12 months with many of our members of parliament, and it's great to see ministers actually attending our board meetings and being able to be actively involved in those discussions. Might move on to the next page, which is the capacity building. We've undertaken some work around community wastewater management, local roads forum, and this is about trying to keep both elected and operational staff aware of the current programs and support. The York Mid-North Regional Forums, unfortunately that didn't occur, obviously, but there is now a series of webinars which are being held this month, and the Climate Ready Conference again was put off, but that's another series of webinars occurring every Thursday during June, and information has gone out about those. We've currently undertaken a webinar last week on cyber security and information technology and data gathering for our member councils, and there's also a tourism ready webinar coming up next week. So that's some of the work that we're doing around capacity building, and might move on to the next slide. The next slide is projects, and projects we've undertaken, which probably have, I won't run through them all, but significance to the Barossa is the Special Local Roads Program, and the submission for Bassdown Road has been submitted for this financial year, and we've updated the plan and the regional priority list and included that as one of the projects to get funding out of SLRP, and we should know in the next month or so where we've gone with that. The youth into volunteering, we have had, this was some work done by Safecom through Helen Smith, and one of the projects which was identified was a potential youth into emergency services project for the Barossa, and following up with that, obviously subject to where we go with our business plan and budget for next year. There have been 2 reports in the last month which have been completed. One of those was a youth into volunteering report, and the other was a creative industries report. Both of those will go to the board on the 5th of June for inclusion onto our website. But if anybody wants a copy of those projects, please let myself know, and I can send those through to you. We'll move on to partnerships, and partnerships of interest. is where we're going with the York and Mid-North Alliance. And there were some discussions held last week, obviously with the changes to the Landscape Board boundaries, some opportunities maybe to include at a more formal level RDA Barossa, Light, Gawler and Adelaide Plains, and specifically based around those climate change sector agreements, and opportunities for more around the regional forums. I think there's certainly some work to be done around Drought Futures Fund. Two of the projects which we're currently looking at for 2020-21 is the smart meter, the sensors with SA Water for monitoring public spaces, and also a project looking at stormwater and being able to capture and use some of that stormwater as possible Drought Futures funded projects. The university MOUs have been some work we've undertaken this year, and we now have a strategic research action plan in place with UniSA and an MOU with Adelaide University, and looking to finish one with, to start an MOU with Flinders Uni over the next couple of months. I'll move on to the next slide, which is around the year 2021, where our priorities are. We've been funded through SAROC and also Green Industries SA to undertake a regional waste management strategy. We will also look at, based on the budget and business plan for the Legatus Group, we'll then look at a specific regional Legatus waste action plan. So that project, the regional waste strategy, is starting this week, and we have a working group based around that. The CWMS Community Wastewater Management Scheme will continue. I touched briefly on the SA Water trials. Certainly some work around community capacity, volunteering, further progress around the creative industries, and also the brighter futures out of the Department of Health. And we're keen to look at some of the smaller, more isolated communities around some smaller community capacity building. A focus on roads, visitor information services, climate change, digital gathering, and also resource sharing, will continue to drive the 2021 business plan and budget. So that's a quick update on where we've gone this year and what we're working on for next year. And I'm more than happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Milcott. Any questions from the elected members? Just put it in your attention so I can see those who have any questions. There you go. You've done well. As you've indicated, we do have a report coming up later on in the agenda. We do pose some questions and we'll come back with some further points of clarification, Simon, through that process. So thanks very much for your presentation and the information that you've presented to the Barossa Council today.
My pleasure, and enjoy the meeting.
Thank you. Members, we'll go back to the CA item, which was withdrawn, which is 4.3.1.1. This was withdrawn by Councillor Troop, the Barossa Cares website. Councillor Troop.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's Councillor Troop here. I won't go through the whole report because obviously you've had a read. But I do want to just say publicly, because I don't think we've done it yet as such, just a big thank you to Mr. McCarthy and the Corporate Community Services for the absolutely amazing job that they've done of Barossa Cares. Ms. Thomas, Ms. Hargy, Deb Anderson, Yona Taylor, Karen McDonald, they have all worked over and above to get that website up and going in 2.5 weeks after the COVID emergency. So I just want to really give them a shout out.
but also, obviously, you can see by the report it's quite a unique project because it actually harnesses the top level government organisations like Ferris Care Council, Health Advisory Council, but it also harnesses the small groups that often don't get much airplay. You know, the Facebook pages visiting people and the small NGOs. So it's quite a unique invention. Like, it was quite a creative collaboration. It's quite a good collaboration. But I just wanted to highlight something that was not on the report, and it came through when the stakeholders were having a meeting just 2 weeks ago. And I think Councillor Boothby discussed during the workshop that we would really appreciate some stats around this. And I think all that is on the report is only the actual hits on the site. But I just wanted to make clear that there was actually 2,000 clicks over the first sort of month on actual health and well-being, and that really probably is a great indication. And that is actually not including the COVID updates. So that's a separate tab. So it's quite an indication probably that where we were heading for the whole site was actually hitting the mark, because people were actually looking for help in their health and that mental health area. Also, food and accommodation, kindness and connection were pretty much, and also specialist care like NDIS were actually clicked on quite a lot as well. There is a breakdown of that I can share with you via email anyway. But I guess the thing is that as we were discussing on that Wednesday, as a snapshot of the needs, I mean, it's not altogether reliable, but it is an indication that health and wellbeing have specifically been something that the community has wanted information on. And I just wanted to highlight one thing that we are very aware of on the committee, is that we will probably never know the results, the positives that come out of this website, because a lot of them are unseen. We don't know how many people have actually been passed on to suicide prevention networks or Lifeline and things like that. So I personally have used it for youth who have been vulnerable and depressed. I've also used it for parents. So I've sourced things off this website myself. So, you know, it's interesting that that is the areas that have been used the most on that website. And I just want to congratulate everyone involved. And we'll see where it goes from here. I think it's quite exciting, and I think that we can see a long-term use for this website. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Drew. Yeah, with many of the interviews that I was involved in, I did make mention of the Barossa Cares Group and the valuable contribution that they have provided. So well done to everyone involved. Would you like to move that report now be received?
Yes, I can move that.
Is there a seconder? Someone put attention in who is going to second? Councillor Wee-Smith, seconding. Thank you. Councillor Angus, you want to make a comment? No, okay. I'll put the motion then, and we'll go through the those indicating, please. Deputy Mayor Boothby?
Yes.
Councillor Angus?
Yes.
Councillor Hearn?
Yes.
Councillor Havey?
Yes.
Councillor De Vries?
Yes.
Councillor Johnston?
Yes.
Councillor Barrett?
Yes.
Councillor Troop?
Yes.
Councillor Wee-Smith?
Yes.
Councillor Schilling?
Yes.
Councillor Miller?
Yes.
That is carried, that CA item be received. Now, I've had a request for a short break. Would someone like to move that and second it? Which one? No seconders. We'll carry on. Okay. CA item 4.5.1.1. The Barossa assessment panel has been withdrawn. This needs to be dealt with in formal council. Councillor Johnston?
Yes, I wish to declare a conflict of interest and I'll leave the meeting.
Thank you, Councillor.
I've got my phone on.
We'll dial you back in.
We'll dial you back in the moment we've gone through this item. Councillor Miller?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I do have a conflict of interest in this particular agenda item, and I will be excusing myself from the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll dial you back in once we've completed. Councillor De Vries?
Move the recommendation, Your Worship.
Thank you. Seconder? Councillor Boothby? You're seconding the motion?
Correct.
I'll go through the list. Any debate or any comments? Councillor Wee-Smith?
I just wanted to note that in the recommendation, Councillor Johnston is missing as the deputy member.
Thanks, Councillor Wee-Smith. You beat me to it. The revised resolution includes the council deputy mayor, Councillor Russell Johnston. The rest remain as they are.
Thank you. Any further questions?
Happy to include that in the motion, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor. Seconder are happy with that? Councillor Boothby?
Yes.
Thank you. I'll go through. Deputy Mayor Boothby, your indication, please.
Yes.
Councillor Angus?
Yes.
Councillor Hearn?
Yes.
Councillor Hayvick?
Yes.
Councillor De Vries?
Yes.
Councillor Barrett?
Yes.
Councillor Troop?
Yes.
Councillor Wee-Smith?
Yes.
Councillor Schilling?
Yes.
Motion is carried that those people be appointed to the Development Assessment Panel.
Mayor, can we now add Councillor Miller and Councillor Johnston back?
Yes. We'll bring back Councillor Miller and Councillor Johnston to the meeting.
Just give me 1 minute. When they come back on, can you just check that they are there by getting the things? Councillor Miller should be on. I'll just send that Councillor Johnston.
Councillor Miller, are you back?
Yep.
Councillor Johnston?
Yes, I'm present.
Thank you. Members will now move to 7.2.1, the Drought Communities Program extension. And members, I have looked at this and have considered the standpipe recommendations, and I'm happy to suspend standing orders to work through a little bit more detail if that's the wish of the meeting, if someone wants to move and second at that. But my thoughts are that, in a nutshell, that whilst I have no problems with Eden Valley, Mount Pleasant and Macolta, I have some reservations as to the warrants for Williamstown, Sandy Creek and Anguston. So if we can just, if someone would like to move, we suspend and we see it a seconder, and if we get 2/3, we can do that. Otherwise, we'll move on. Councillor De Vries?
So moved.
Seconder?
And Councillor Boothby.
Which one? Councillor Boothby?
Yes.
Thank you. I'll just need to run through and see if I get 2/3. Councillor Boothby?
Yes.
Councillor Angus?
Yes.
Councillor Hearn?
Yes.
Councillor Hayvick?
Yes.
Councillor De Vries?
Yes.
Councillor Johnston?
Yes.
Councillor Barrett?
Yes.
Councillor Troop?
Yes.
Councillor Wee Smith?
Yes.
Councillor Schilling?
Yes.
Councillor Miller? That's carried. We'll suspend standing orders. Councillor De Vries?
Yeah, Your Worship, because this is a very long, slow process, I was just thinking, I personally would not feel offended if you just called out my surname and didn't worry about putting in the word councillor. I think that would speed up the roll call somewhat. And if we all just, the moment you called the roll, we all just turn our microphones on, then we don't have to wait while everybody turns their mic on, says yes, and turns it off again. I know it's a, if you pardon the pun, a moot point, but it would still, I think, just speed things up a little bit. And as I said, I'm personally quite happy for you not to use the term councillor when calling the roll, if that's going to speed proceedings somewhat.
Thank you. Just with this item, going back to this item, I know the background behind it, and I believe when we met at a workshop, we talked about spreading these types of water supply facilities around as far as we possibly can. But I think we can get a better return from the funds that's been received. Williamstown in particular, we've got bore water and we've got other sorts of activities associated from the water availability in the town itself. We're on mains water, good pressure and all those other things. So there has to be a really catastrophic event to warrant such a facility. Sandy Creek is also bore water, and once again it sits right on a feeder main with ability to collect whatever water's needed in that area. And Anguston, once again, bore water and good facilities. I just think that in light of where we need to go with some of this money and some of the criteria and some of the things that's been set down in the report, that we probably get a better return with things like looking more in detail and asking staff to come back with some more things like footpath or any other sorts of projects. I know in particular Williamstown has been for a couple of years talking about a pedestrian bridge on Kersbrook Road. Now, whether that has merit or not at this particular time, but I just am hesitant to sort of see staff put any time or energy into those three at the as listed in the report.
Now we've got Councillor De Vries, Councillor Angus and Councillor Boothby.
So I've got Councillor De Vries, Councillor Angus and then Councillor Boothby.
Thank you, Worship. Yeah, I agree. I think that just spending money for the sake of spending money when it could be possibly directed towards more vital purposes is sound and prudent. So I think this is where we're getting into the issue of nice to have versus the need to have. I think that if it's not absolutely essential, and if that money could be better served, I agree with you. I think that we should probably put the money where it's best used.
Councillor Angus?
Yes, totally agree with Councillor De Vries. Put the facilities where they're needed, and Anguston has a perfectly good bore in the Angus Rec Park, which could be hooked up for people to utilise. Someone's got a microphone on and an aeroplane going over, by the
Here's
sound
an
of it.
aeroplane going over, Councillor.
Yeah. So yeah, I think Eden Valley, Mount Pleasant, and McColter are the ones to concentrate on. That's all. Thank you.
Councillor Boothby.
Yeah, I had similar feedback around the water projects that are listed, and also looking at, with the further discussion we'll have on the new initiatives and what we can't do as a result of needing to have a tighter budget this year. So obviously, the COVID-19 puts a whole new lens on all of our discussions, and I think that, if there are better uses of the funds in terms of having a broader impact as well, things like the 200 grand we can't do in additional footpath funding, I think it'd be great to reallocate some to that, to have that broader reach. And just also on the tourism signage, I'm aware that the South Australian Tourism Commission are actually investing in tourism signage at the moment in their current budget, because as an initiative that they can't do a lot of marketing. So obviously it'd be great to tap into that and leverage that funds to make best use of it. So I'm not sure how much will come to the Barossa. Okay, we are one of, I think, 11 tourism regions. But it'd be great to do that, and also in not just Barossa Grape and Wine Association as the owners of the brand, but also to be consulting with Tourism Barossa, who obviously will be keen to have a view, and also RDA. I would imagine that there's work been done for a very, very, very long time on tourism signage. To have that broader group in there would be great.
Thank you. Councillor Johnston.
I concur with what Leonie's just said, and I'd also like to ask a question of the overall approach to this is making sure that the money goes to employment in the local community, and I'm not convinced that these projects necessarily would achieve that. So whatever we choose to do in terms of the new initiatives, I think it'd be great to make sure that it employs local people, especially with SARS-CoV-2 on the run. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Barrett.
Yeah, I think I've pressed the attention button twice, so apologies. So I've only want to speak once. I'll speak about both of them very, very briefly. I've great difficulty with the signs. When I look at this, I mentioned 37 signs. It's almost $5.5 grand per sign. It's a lot of money, and I'd very much like to see some more tangible things people can use rather than a sign. In regard to the, and I'll now move on to the water supply. I spoke to a ratepayer last night, and since the 11th of November, she lives just out the back of Springton. She's now done 86 individual trips into Mount Pleasant at 1,000 litres a time. So this is a real issue that is affecting people, and if you count up the number of days back from the 11th of November, she's almost doing daily trips in to keep her livestock. She's got sheep and horses out the back of Springton, so that's where I've can't support the initiative enough for the water supply. Thank you.
Councillor Wee-Smith.
Yes, thanks. Like Councillor Barrett, I'm having a hard time getting my head around the town signage fitting into this project and this funding. I think there's probably other things we could be doing with this money that better fits this program, this Drought Communities program. As Councillor Barrett said, some more tangible benefits, things that people can actually use. And as Councillor Boothby also mentioned, the South Australian Tourism Commission is looking at doing some of this work at the moment. They're funding some stuff. They're also working with other government departments. So that could potentially fit into another program. Who knows what might come up. In regards to the water, I think I don't necessarily agree with all the locations that have been listed there, but I think that we need to keep in mind, someone mentioned about the necessity of these. When we encounter an emergency, that's when it becomes a necessity. And the thinking behind this was to prepare ourselves for an emergency, such as Pinery, such as Sampson Flat. So I think if we find ourselves in that position, everyone would be saying, yes, this is absolutely necessary. I also like the fact that I can see this project delivering a lot of local jobs through construction. So I'd like to see that one sort of fleshed out a bit more.
No, look, fully understand, and being a CFS group officer for many years, the emergencies that do crop up, there's your comment's valid, but I guess with that is, you know, over 60 odd years we can find all sorts of waters in all sorts of locations, but without a doubt the Eden Valley, Mount Pleasant and Macolda have sound needs because of the amount of carting as Councillor Barrett has indicated with some of those residents during this prolonged time of drought. Councillor Troop.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just wondering, I really do like the signs because I think they do need to be revamped. But however, I'm always sort of concerned with the continuity. I mean, we've had discussions about our brand name being changed, Barossa Council's website being updated, and then we've had discussions about the Barossa brand, and I just think perhaps it's a little bit premature to be able to be putting this wheels on the road yet, because what if we decide to go a different way? What if the brand Barossa doesn't come through? What if there's legalities around that? I do like the fact, I think we need new signs 100%, but I wonder if the discussion is a little bit premature, especially after the comments Councillor Boothby just made with the bigger picture. So that's just all I had to add.
Members, we're getting a fair bit of discussion here. Is it worth considering lying this on the table and we bring it to a workshop and get some more information? We seem to be seeking clarification on a number of points. What's your thoughts? Councillor Wee-Smith?
Yes, Mayor, I'm happy to move that lie on the table. I think, yeah, it is something that needs to come back to a workshop and we can flesh it out a bit more.
Thank you. Would someone like to second that? Councillor Barrett?
You're muted.
Happy to second it.
Members,
Your Worship, somebody needs
item to lie on the table, so I need to put the motion. I'll run through the list. This is to have this item to do with the drought relief funding program extension, to lay on the table and come back to a workshop for further discussion and clarification. I'll take on Councillor De Vries's suggestion. Boothby?
I just want to clarify how much time do we actually have in terms of needing to actually come back to the federal government to say what we're going to do, with these funds, and also I guess I wasn't at the workshop and I apologise for that, but one of the challenges for us at the moment is actually looking at a whole bunch of different funding sources that are potential. So we've got a suite of capital projects that we have applied for funding for under different grant funds. We also have a set of new initiatives that, again, we'll discuss later in the meeting. And we have the big project that still has a remaining set of projects under that we have prioritised already that have community benefit that we can come back to looking at. So I think we do need more information to be able to make best use of those funds. But the first piece of information is how much time do we have, and can we ask for an extension if we are looking at a time frame that is going to prohibit further discussion?
There's no limitation on the day at which it has to be submitted. Obviously, it's got to go through their assessment process. It just has to be spent by the 30th of June 2021.
Yeah, so it does give us some time to really make sure that we're getting the best return from this money that's been made available after much lobbying.
So
Not so much from Legardus, I might add.
On condition you actually give us enough time to build the stuff.
Yeah, that's the other side of it. There is a sunset clause on the spend, isn't there? Yep.
30th of June 2021.
30th of June 2021. So whatever we do, we need to sort of work through it and get these points clarified. Now, I have a mover, and I can't remember whether I've got a seconder or not yet. We have. So I need to put that motion. I'll go through the list again, like Boothby.
Yes.
Angus.
Yep.
Hearn.
Yes.
Havik.
Yes.
De Vries.
Yes.
Johnston.
Yes.
Barrett.
Yes.
Troop.
Yes.
Wee Smith.
Yes.
Schilling.
Yes.
Miller.
Yes.
Members, that matter is to lie on the table and come back to a workshop. We'll now move on to 7.2.1.2 on page 171, the COVID-19 service level update, page 171, and that motion was carried. Councillor De Vries.
Yeah, move the recommendation, Your Worship.
Councillor Boothby.
Happy to second that motion.
Would you like to speak to the motion?
Oh, no, I think it's all in the report, to be honest, Your Worship. Pretty straightforward.
Councillor Boothby, do you wish to speak?
No, thank you, Mayor. No, thank you.
Councillor Wee Smith.
No, I was just looking to second.
Councillor Johnston.
Ditto.
Okay. Any questions? Not, I'll put the motion. Boothby.
Yes.
Angus.
Yes.
Hearn.
Yes.
Havik.
Yes.
De Vries.
Yes.
Johnston.
Yes.
Barrett. Troop.
Yes.
Yes.
Wee Smith.
Yes.
Schilling.
Yes.
Miller.
Yes.
Motion is carried. Next item is 7.2.1.3, the new initiatives recommendation on page 177.
Councillor Johnston, please.
Councillor Johnston.
Yes, I'll move that recommendation, please.
Councillor Wee Smith.
I'll second that.
Thank you. You wish to speak to the motion, either the mover or seconder?
No, Your Worship.
Councillor Wee Smith.
I need to say that I think, this makes sense. It's common sense. We've talked about this at length already, and yes, it's challenging times at the moment, so we need to do what we need to do.
Councillor Boothby.
I guess I just want to clarify, in particular in relation to the guardrail item for Mangler Hill, just to seek clarification that the safety issues will be addressed with that, and also I guess the request that when we do discuss the drought funding in the workshop, that we can have a look at that footpath 200k as well.
Mr. Hilding.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the guardrail is not in the base budget at this stage.
Sorry, Matt, can you just clarify that that's an increase? There is still some in the base?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry, CEO, can you repeat that, please?
There is a base. What that was increasing the delivery.
It's a repair renewal. Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's a repair renewal, so it's not an increase in service level. It's I guess it's larger than a maintenance project in that it's around $100,000 to do that work.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I mean, Councillor Boothby, I've noted those two down for conversation at the workshop.
Thank you. Councillor DeVries.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, there's two initiatives that I'm a bit concerned about. One is Short Row in Angaston and the other is Bushman Street in Tanunda. These two have been on the list of items that we were looking to do 2 years ago, and then it was deferred for a year, and then it went for another year where we were looking to do it last year, and then we said, oh no, we'll defer it to next year, which is now coming up. My concern is that the way this is worded at the moment, and CEO can correct me if I'm wrong, basically no further analysis should be undertaken. That basically means these two are dead and forever, will never get looked at until we change this motion or rescind it down the road. Is that accurate? And I am concerned that these two have just been pushed off because the residents have been told 2 years in a row now that we were going to address it. I passed that information on in good faith, believing that it was actually accurate. And I think that breaching faith with the community is not a good process to go through. So first off with the CEO, does this basically say we cannot look at those two items again? And if we can, how can we go through it and do that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it simply says it concludes the new initiative process. What you guys ultimately put in the business and budget plan is still up to you.
I guess from our workshop, my recollection of it was we was not going ahead with any new initiatives, and I guess we can all find odd little ones that we've all had lobbies for over the years, and unfortunately the circumstances are the circumstances. But as the CEO has indicated, it's up to the elected body as to how you want to move with this one. We have a move and a second.
So as a point of clarification then, what we're saying is that no further analysis should be undertaken, but they can be analysed under a different process.
CEO?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. If you want them in the budget, they'll get assessed.
Thank you.
Councillor Boothby?
My question has been answered. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments? The motion is as it's written. I'll put the motion. I'll run through the list. Boothby?
Yes.
Angus?
Yes.
Hearn?
Yes.
Hayvick?
Yes.
DeVries?
Yes.
Johnston?
Yes.
Barrett?
Yes.
True?
Yes.
Wee Smith?
Yes.
Schilling?
Yes.
Miller?
Yep.
Members will now move to item 7.2.1.4, the Newry Centenary Park Authority loan replacements and extension on page 184. And members, just before, and I know Councillor Hearn wants to speak, but I just want to get some clarification on a few points that's been raised with me. The figures from the CEO that was provided in the report, there's been some thought that they might include other community assets. Is this wholly and solely the undertakings of the Newry Caravan Park facility?
Absolutely. It's the way that the budgets and financials have worked for the NCPA. They're essentially like 4 individual budgets. So So only the costs associated with the caravan park are being shown, or costs and revenues.
Thank you. Now, Councillor Hearn, you did talk to me about and I'm happy to, if there's a mover and a seconder and want to suspend formal standing orders.
Also move, Mayor.
Councillor Hearn has moved that we suspend standing orders to discuss this matter a little bit further. And is there a seconder? Councillor De Vries, you're seconding?
Yes.
Okay, I'll now to run through the list and get 2/3. And I think we ought to put a time limit on this one. I reckon 10 minutes would be long enough. What do you think? That's my decision, so I'll stay with that. Councillor Boothby?
Yes.
Angus?
Reluctantly, yes.
Hearn?
Yes.
Havik?
Not switched in.
De Vries?
Yes.
Johnston?
Yes.
Barrett?
Yes.
Troop?
Yes.
Willie Smith?
Yes.
Schilling?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
Those not in favour to suspend?
May I think Councillor Havik was on that.
Councillor Havik, I didn't hear from you. Was you a yes or a no?
Oh, yes.
Okay. We have everybody. Okay, we'll suspend standing orders. Councillor Hearn.
Thanks, Mayor. When I first saw this motion, I wondered why we were putting all of this information in there, as Big Four has been an integral part of the new growth until COVID-19 came along, and the park was expected to exceed budget by some $200,000. So at the beginning of the COVID lockdown, we had, I say we as the park, because I'm on the board, 240,000 in the bank, and we're entering two of our highest revenue months, March and April, with the Easter holiday fully booked out. So the expectation was that we'd enter or end the financial year well ahead of budget, with both lower costs and higher revenue. So the target was to exceed budget of upwards of some 200,000. So we would have easily able to provide the 130,000 payment in this motion. Instead, revenue went from some 200,000 a month to approximately $20,000 a month, with a flood of cancellations and refunds. So staff numbers were reduced to a skeleton crew of permanent employees, and the caravan park virtually closed except for a few bona fide workers hiring cabins. So with the park management, because there was some talk about whether the board was doing the right thing, but Big Four parks are considered by the industry and its customers as one of the best names in the industry, offering a quality experience to their customers.
Councillor Councillor,
yes?
can you just get to the point so we know exactly where you want to go with this? And I think we're all aware. I don't mean to cut you off, but I think we're all aware that caravan parks and everybody else and a number of other businesses have been hit pretty hard. But just stay with the issue that we've got before us as far as what's in the recommendations.
Okay. Well, the nature of the park is a large proportion of the park assets are commercially non-performing, and these assets are in the sport and recreation side. So the caravan park supports these assets financially by paying for their management and maintenance, like with the Coulthard Reserve as well, the ovals, etc. And the balance sheet doesn't distinguish between the performing and non-performing assets, and it shows the depreciation of these assets at a cost of the business as a whole. So the fact that they will increase with the new footy cricket change rooms that are going, that'll be at 1 million, and then also if the soccer pitches go in, that'll be another 3.5. So it'll go from the current 9 million up to about $14 million, and they're expected to pick up the depreciation from these assets. So,
Councillor Hearn, I just want to get that clarified. I know we talked about this last night.
yes.
Going to ask the CEO, because I don't think that's quite correct.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. No, as I just said, the depreciation is actually sectionalised into each particular thing. So the figures you're looking at there do not include any depreciation for any community-based assets, any revenue or any expenditure. It's purely the commercial assets.
Well, that's not how the board sees it, but there we go. And I think Mr. Legge put a report in to say that over the next 4 or 5 years we could become cash negative. Now, if those buildings etc. weren't in there, and I think the CEO has, when looking at the motion, has even suggested that they be, if the board looking at outside assessment, that those assets be taken out of the equation. So there seems to be something that we as a board don't understand, and I as a councillor don't understand then. But what I'm suggesting is that we perhaps take it to a workshop and just use clause A and E as a for this motion, and then look at the other estimates and costings as a workshop item.
Thanks, Councillor Hearn. I'll just get some comments from other members. Councillor De Vries.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, look, my view is, and I've had very long conversations with Councillor Hearn, as he would readily admit, and I've also discussed this with the CEO as well, and I can see some of Councillor Hearn's concerns, but at the end of the day, what the recommendation is actually looking at is identifying how the commercial assets are going to be best performing, whether they would be better performed if we put it out to some sort of commercial management along similar lines, I guess, to the Rex, or whether it should stay under the current model. I don't really have a fixed view on that either way at the moment, but I do believe that we certainly need to explore the alternatives, given that under the section 42, this whole process is up for review. This seems like the obvious and perfect time to look at it. There seems to be a difference of opinion as to how well the commercial assets are performing under the current model. I'd like as much possible data as we can get. So given that the intention is to see about splitting the commercial and the community assets, which I have believed for a very long time should be the most appropriate way for this facility to be managed, I think that the recommendation is highly appropriate. I don't think the concerns that I've heard expressed need to be concerns for the current board. If the board can demonstrate, as I'm sure they believe they can, that they are the best to run it and that they are running it effectively and will continue to run it effectively, and that their model is the best for both the council in terms of commercial return and also for the community, I see I can't understand why there would be any concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor De Vries. We're going to have to adjourn this meeting in a few minutes, but to deal with the special meeting that's listed. Councillor Boothby.
Yeah, just quickly, further to what Councillor De Vries was saying. So this is, to me, I read this recommendation it's about having a conversation. The last conversation that was had by council was 6 years ago, and it's time for another conversation. I think it's important to acknowledge that this asset was created by the community, way back in 1936. 1936, I think it was. And the community has managed this facility on our behalf for a really long time. It has done its job in terms of it was created to actually provide funds to provide funding for the sport and rec, and it has done that. But so much has changed, not only in the last, since 1936, but in the last 6 years, in terms of how hard it is to run a business like this, and particularly in the current environment. And having been on that board myself for quite a number of years, it's really frustrating for that group of volunteers too. It's not easy being on that volunteer committee. And I think we're actually doing them a disservice if we don't have this conversation, because we're asking them to manage a really significant commercial asset and they are a group of volunteers. So we need to help. We need to be able to give direction and actually work out what the best model actually is. Things like risk management has added a huge burden to that group. So we can't do things the way we used to do them, with no policies, no procedures, and just good faith. So there's complete duplication of effort across the board. Having said that, huge value in having the community involved in managing it. So it's not, I wouldn't be happy to make a decision or really discuss it at a workshop without a whole bunch of work having been done external to us, to have a whole bunch of conversations that are relevant to bring it back to us, because it's time to actually have a new conversation. We're not saying that we're going to do anything differently. What we're saying is let's talk about it.
Thanks for that. Look, it looks as if that recommendation sort of covers a whole range of things whereby we can get more information and have further discussions. It is 11 o'clock. We need to move a motion to adjourn the meeting. Does others wish to speak, or does someone want to put the motion and we move on? Carla? Sorry, Councillor Wee-Smith?
No, not me.
I think Councillor Habig was wanting to say something there.
Councillor Habig?
Okay, thanks very much. When I first read this, I couldn't work it out why over all these years since 2014 we now get to this stage where everything apparently has been going along very well. I have gone back over the last 12 months and looked at the minutes of the Park Committee. Nowhere in there does it state anything is wrong with the finances of that committee. And in fact, the Treasury report back in February rather, says that January was a busy and successful month, with site fees reaching 20% above budget for the month and cabin fees 10%. Occupancy is on the rise, with every month exceeding the same month in comparison to last year. Now, all the reports for the whole 12 months virtually say the same. And I think one of the problems is that when we've got a community enterprise and a commercial, it appears to me, from what I can gain, is that the community caravan park is keeping the rest of it going. Budget's coming out of there for a lot of things. So I've also gone back and checked on the audit reports dating back to 2014. Nowhere in these audit reports does this kind of thing get mentioned. I think that says one thing. There's nothing really wrong there, except there must be some underlying reason why we need to go down the track. Back in 2014, when the June 14 business case was set up for this, it's on page 190 in the agenda, in section 4. There's 10 conditions there. I want to know if all these conditions have been met. I deal with training, risk assessments, the whole lot. Nowhere have I been told anything about these conditions, whether they've been adhered to. Now we get to this stage. So I've got huge issues with moving on with this in the current status, and I just think we should be thinking about moving to approve the finances and sit down and talk about it, because that's what I think we should be doing. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Having. I guess my read of the recommendation is in line with what you've just said. We'll get information, we can sit down and talk about it. The CEO?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just two things. Financial statements and audit reports do not make a recommendation on the viability of an organisation. They simply say that they meet the accounting standards and have a managed risk environment. This is about a conversation, data, and actually being informed to actually go to a workshop and be fully informed exactly where the commercials and assets are at. The other thing that I to add, we have to do a review of the governance structure in any case this year. There's no underlying issue with the sporting club component. This is about making sure that commercial assets are actually returning the best. And the issue with the Treasurer is he's comparing it against a budget. That budget has been significantly revised down from the improved business case. So you need to compare against the business case that the prior council approved as to know how it's performing after its investment, not a revised budget.
Members, I think we've there is a motion there, which, as I indicated, and I believe reading through the document and the recommendations, it does all the things that I think you're all wanting to see: more information, more analysis, and it would be prudent to sort of put all these things, and we've got other services that we may have to look at in light of recent events that need the same due diligence. I haven't got we'll move back to normal council meetings so we can move on to the special. Councillor De Vries.
Move the meeting be adjourned.
Oh, we can just come straight out.
No, you need to do that.
No?
You have to now, he's done a procedural motion.
Okay. Will I get a second for that? I need a seconder for that, because that formal motion. Councillor Boothby, you second that?
No, I was actually going to be moving or seconding the recommendation in the report.
Okay, well, I'll get a seconder so that we can come back to the formal meeting and then we can deal with the motion. Seconder that we go back to formal meeting?
No, I'm moving that we move out of this meeting because we're supposed to have another meeting at 11 o'clock, and that was 6 minutes ago.
Okay, no, that's fine. All right, now I know which one you're talking about. Thank you. My apologies. Seconder that we adjourn this meeting based on the recommendation or the motion that's been put by Councillor De Vries.
I second it.
Thank you. All those in favour? Boothby?
Yes.
Angus?
Yes.
Hearn?
Yes.
Havik?
Yes.
De Vries?
Yes.
Johnston?
Yes.
Barrett?
Yes.
Troop?
Yes.
Willie Smith?
Yes.
Schilling?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
That is carried. We adjourn the meeting.
For the purposes of having a special meeting.
For the what? Carried. Members will move into the special meeting. The agenda has been sent out. And I welcome you to the special meeting, 19th of May 2020. I need to go through the roll call to make those that are present listed. Boothby. Angus.
Present.
Hearn.
Present.
Havik.
Present.
De Vries.
Present.
Johnston.
Present.
Barrett.
Present.
Troop.
Present.
Willie Smith.
Present.
Schilling.
Present.
Miller.
Present.
CEO. You present?
I am present.
Minutes Secretary. Directors. Director Thomas.
Present.
Works Director.
Present.
And Planning and Environment Director.
Present.
Thank you. Item 2.1.1, COVID-19 Recovery Plan. Page 3.
you want me to talk, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, please.
Just two very quick ones. Obviously, people are across the document. There is one part of the document that has an extra zero on it in the response to do with. Sorry, I'm just getting to it. So on page 17, the third phase should show 15,000. There's an extra zero. And Councillor Boothby has asked to put up an additional part of the resolution to provide flexibility to the working group and myself if there's some minor changes in moving those funds around in different components. Just bring that up. Yep. So just the request I've had is that Part 6 would authorise the Chief Executive Officer to amend the budget distribution across the policy responses, but thereby not increasing or decreasing the total budget allocation after consulting with the PERG and reporting any amendments to a subsequent meeting of Council. Back to you, Mr. Mayor.
I may have to ask the Deputy Mayor to take over for a moment.
That's right, Councillor Boothby.
Councillor Boothby.
Certainly. So, Mr. CEO, am I able to speak to that amendment if I am now in control of the meeting, or no?
It's not an amendment. If you move it, that just becomes part of the motion.
Okay, so which I won't be able to do now if I'm actually in the running. So, but I'll have to look for a mover and a seconder for that.
No, you
recommendation.
Second the motion.
Okay. In that case, I will move that change to recommendation. Is there a seconder?
I'll second it. I put attention twice.
Oh, I beg your pardon, Councillor De Vries. So seconded, Councillor De Vries. Any comments and questions before we put that for discussion? Sorry, Councillor Wee-Smith.
I was just going to second that motion.
Okay. Are there any other comments?
Councillor Boothby run the meeting for a moment because I'm offline.
Sorry, Councillor De Vries, did you wish to speak to the motion?
No, I think everybody's across the document, but if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to speak after.
Are there any other? And the seconder wish to speak? That was Councillor West-Smith. No? Are there any comments or questions?
Seconded.
Okay. Oh, sorry, I apologise. I moved it, and if Councillor De Vries doesn't want to speak, then if I speak again, I will close the discussion. So, is there any further discussion before I do that? No. Okay. So, basically, the reason that I wanted to add that flexibility was to basically, if there, for example, isn't a requirement to spend $10,000 on a campaign about We Are Here, that money could be reallocated to a better purpose. Also, particularly around the marketing campaign, that phase 1, 2, 3. Phases 2 and 3 may not happen for quite some time. Phase 1 may require significant funding. So, basically is to provide that additional flexibility to the CEO to be able to move that funding where it's needed. I'm also keen for us to continue to advocate for localised support from state and federal government and potentially from us moving forward for businesses that are going to be forced to not be able to actually operate to their full capacity in a profitable way for quite some time. And also, which may be a future discussion for us at an imminent workshop if needed, is businesses that are actually also core to our cultural fabric because they are, have long-standing history in our townships, and/or for the work that they do, which is non-commercial. So I'm thinking about the likes of the Vine Inn and the Tanunda Club, in terms of businesses that may well be vital to our community culture. And may need some assistance. I think we need to be able to have this document be a living, breathing thing that can actually be, moving with us as we need it to, basically. So, Mayor, you're online again.
I'm back online now, so if you close
do you want to
the
do
debate,
okay, well, I've just closed the debate. We now need to call for support.
Yes, I'll run through the list. Councillor Boothby?
Yes.
Angus?
Yes.
Hearn?
Yes.
Havik?
Yes.
DeVries?
Yes.
Johnston?
Yes.
Barrett?
Full support.
Troop?
Yes.
Wee Smith?
Yes.
Schilling?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
The motion is carried. I'll close the meeting and we'll revert back to the agenda that we have before us. And we're still dealing with item 7.2.1.4. We'll now go. Councillor DeVries.
Move the recommendation, Your Worship.
Thank you. Seconder, Boothby.
Happy to second the motion, Mayor.
Councillor DeVries, you wish to speak to the motion?
Look, I think I better, because I suspect there'll be some that may wish to speak against it. I'll just hit the main points. We need to go through a review every 5 years, and this year the review's time is up. We have to do that under legislation. So if we're going to do the review, we might as well do it properly rather than just doing a half review. I believe that there may be better ways to run the organisation. On the other hand, that maybe that the current model is absolutely perfect, but we won't know unless we test it, and that's what I wish to do. As Councillor Boothby said before in the more open discussion, this is no reflection on the skills or abilities of the board, but times have changed and things are becoming more and more complicated. And I think we owe it to the board at least to explore all the options and make sure that everything is working well. There have been problems with the finances of this organisation in the past. Again, no reflection on the current board. I think they're doing a wonderful job, but there may be better ways which it can be handled. So this is very much about a review. It's about gathering the information that we need to make a proper assessment, and I believe that the board will be and should be closely aligned in that process. Thank you.
Councillor Boothby, you wish to speak as a seconder?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So again, agreeing with what Councillor DeVries has said, but also, as I said earlier, this is a tough ask for a volunteer board of management. Before COVID, it was hard. It's even harder now. I think that, as I said before, the model has done its job for many years in providing funds for the sport and rec, but it has also been a point of contention with the board for the whole time I've lived in the Barossa and been part of these conversations, is that unhappy marriage sometimes between the community facilities and the commercial side of the park, having to one support the other and also be understanding of the other. These are complex issues. So any lessee that came in would have to be understanding of what the requirements are for the community and sporting assets at the same time. And that's not easy. There are big issues to resolve in terms of cabin replacement and ongoing CapEx for the entire park and how that's financed. and also for the relationship management between the two. So at the moment, the staff and the board perform multiple functions, and we are very, very grateful for what they're doing. I think this is about not only council as the owner of the asset on behalf of the community making really good decisions from a financial and governance point of view. It is about supporting that group of people and providing some insight. So I think being hands-off is great because it means that someone else is managing that for us. But being hands-off can be really hard on that group of people if they're not given some strategic direction and input from us. So I think it's about supporting them as well.
Councillor Johnston.
Yes, I'd just like to speak in support of the motion and look forward to an analysis of how we may better manage this arrangement. Who knows? We may actually learn that the board's doing a good job and we'll stick to the existing arrangement.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions? Anyone wish to speak against the motion? If not, I'll put the motion. Boothby?
Yes.
Angus?
Yes.
Hearn?
Yes.
Havik?
Yes.
DeVries? David, you there?
Your pardon, I didn't realise I was muted. Yes, obviously.
Johnston?
Yes.
Barrett?
Yes.
Troop?
Yes.
Wee Smith?
Yes.
Schilling?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
Motion is carried. Next item is 7.2.1.5 on page 262. This is the Legatus former Central Local Government Region Business Plan and Budget for 2020-2021. Councillor Boothby.
I'd like to note a perceived conflict of interest. I'm an executive officer for the Upper Spencer Gulf cities in a similar role, and one part of that recommendation will actually incorporate personal information with regards to me. So I will manage that conflict by actually leaving the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. We will just make that arrangement. All good. Okay, let's move on. Councillor DeVries.
You're on mute.
You're on mute again.
Sorry about that. Happy to move the recommendation, Your Worship.
Councillor Johnston.
I'm calling to second it.
Seconded. Councillor DeVries, you wish to speak to the motion?
If anybody wishes to object, I'm happy to speak for it, but otherwise, no, I think it's pretty straightforward.
Councillor Johnston.
Ditto.
Thank you. Look, I just want to say that the CEO's done a deep dive, and we have some very good questions that we need to pose back to the Legatus group in particular, which has been teased out of their business plan. So once we get that information, we'll come back and discuss this further. So with that, if no other questions. Not, I'll put the motion. Boothby?
Choose conflicted.
Oh, sorry. Angus?
Yes.
Hearn?
Yes.
Havik?
Yes.
DeVries?
Yes.
Johnston?
Yes.
Barrett?
Yes.
Troop?
Yes.
Wee Smith?
Yes.
Schilling?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
Motion is carried. What's that? Okay. We'll just bring Councillor Boothby back in. The next item is 7.2.1.5. No, we've just done that one.
Sorry,
7.2.1.6.
Sorry, Mayor.
Public consultation.
We just need to make sure Councillor Booth is back in.
Yes. Councillor Boothby, you back in?
Present.
Thank you. Public consultation policy variation on page 309.
Councillor Johnston.
I'll move that way.
Councillor Johnston, thank
Move
you.
yeah.
Seconder? Councillor Boothby? You're seconding that?
Correct.
Anyone wish to speak to the motion? Questions?
No, Your Worship.
Thank you. Councillor De Vries and Councillor True.
I was simply seconding, but Councillor Boothby beat me to it.
Okay,
And me too.
thank you. No further questions. I'll put the motion. Boothby? Councillor Boothby, you there?
Just need to unmute.
Sorry, yes.
Councillor Angus?
Yes.
Hearn?
Yes.
Hayvick?
Yes.
De Vries?
Yes.
Johnston?
Yes.
Barrett?
Yes.
Troop?
Yes.
Wee Smith?
Yes.
Schilling?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
Motion is carried. Monthly finance report on page 323, item 7.2.2.1. Councillor Troop? Oh, sorry, Councillor Wee Smith.
I've got a question. Did you want to get a mover and seconder first, or?
Yep, that's fine. Is there a mover and a seconder? Councillor De Vries?
Yeah, happy to move.
Councillor Boothby?
Yep, happy to second.
Thank you. Councillor Wee Smith, question?
Yeah, just in relation to the Nuriotba Dog Park, I note that our cost has jumped from 37,000 last month to 48,000 this month. So that's an $11,000 increase. I can't imagine that the benches cost us that much. I'm just wondering where that's all come from.
Thank you, Councillor.
I have to take it on note and pull the financials at transaction level, and I'll get that in the minutes.
You happy with that? Councillor Wee Smith?
I'm going to have to be.
Councillor De Vries and Councillor Hayvick.
I had a similar question. I drove past there the other day, and when you got $11,000, there's nothing else occurred there. So I'd just like to know what the money's been spent on. Thanks.
We'll get you all a line-by-line budget response and put it in the minutes.
Any other questions? I'll put the motion. All those in favour, and I'll run through the list. Boothby?
Sorry, what Councillor was.
Who's got the question?
Councillor Smith.
Oh, Councillor Wee Smith.
Yeah, just while Mr. McCarthy's doing that work, could we perhaps get the same details for the Williamstown Dog Park, please?
Certainly can.
Okay, no further questions. Boothby,
Yes.
Angus,
Yes.
Ern,
Yes.
Havik,
Yes.
De Vries,
Yes.
Johnston,
Yes.
Barrett,
Yes.
Troop,
Yes.
Wee Smith,
Yes.
Schilling,
Yes.
Miller.
Yes.
That's carried. Budget update as of the 31st of March, third quarter report and update on 326. 7.2.2.2.
Councillor De Vries.
Councillor De Vries.
Yeah, move the recommendation, Your Worship.
And then Councillor Johnston.
Councillor Johnston.
I'll second the motion.
And then Councillor Havik.
Councillor Havik.
I was going to second it.
Okay, thank you.
Done.
Anyone, Councillor De Vries or Councillor Johnston, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Look, just to express my gratitude, and I guess the gratitude of all of us for the hard work that the staff have been doing, and under incredibly trying circumstances. Well done.
Thank you. Councillor Johnston.
Thank you, Your Worship. I concur.
Thank you. Any questions? I'll put the motion. Boothby.
Yes.
Angus.
Yes.
Hearn.
Yes.
Havik.
Yes.
De Vries.
Yes.
Johnston.
Yes.
Barrett.
Yes.
Troop.
Yes.
Wee Smith.
Yes.
Schilling.
Yes.
Miller.
Yes.
Motion is carried. Item 3.3.1.1, Community Loan Replacement Request for the Barossa Valley Machinery Preservation Society on 351, Community Loan Repayment. Councillor Wee Smith.
Move the recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Angus.
Happy to second.
Councillor Wee Smith, do you wish to speak?
No, thanks.
Councillor Angus.
No thanks.
Councillor Barrett, was you seconding or?
That's all I was going to do.
And Councillor Boothby.
Same.
Any questions? Okay, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Boothby? Angus?
Yes.
Hearn?
Yes.
Havik?
Yes.
De Vries?
Yes.
Johnston? Members, you're just going to have to bear with me. I've lost my agenda and I just have to reload it.
Page 357, I think, Mayor.
Yeah, I've just got to get the whole agenda up. No, I'm getting there, mate.
357.
We'll move on to the item 7.3.1.2, Gotwell Road. And we need to move this to lay on the table. Would someone move that to lay on the table?
Sorry, Mayor, we've got Councillor Wilson.
Councillor Wee-Smith, you moving that?
No, Mayor, I just want to declare a perceived conflict of interest. I live in the general area, but I don't consider there to be any benefit or detriment to me personally in this matter, so I'll be staying in the meeting.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Havik, you're moving to lay on the table?
I'm moving that way. Thank you.
Councillor Boothby, you seconding?
Yes, Mayor.
Thank you. I'll go through the list. We have a mover and a second for this item to lay on the table. So we deal with the confidential item. Boothby?
Yes.
Angus?
Yes.
Hearn?
Yes.
Havik?
Yes.
DeVries?
Yes.
Johnston?
Yes.
Barrett?
Yes.
Troop?
Yes.
Wee-Smith?
Yes.
Schilling?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
Motion is carried to leave this item to lay on the table. And we'll move into the confidential item. Councillor Havik.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to move that motion as.
Yeah, Councillor Havik.
Thank you. I'd just like to move the motion as stated.
We need to move into confidence first. Councillor Havik, you're moving, we go into confidence.
Yes.
Councillor Boothby, you'll second.
Yes, Mayor.
All those in favour, we go into confidence. Boothby?
Yes.
Boothby?
Yes.
Angus?
Yes.
Hearn?
Yes.
Havik?
Yes.
DeVries?
Yes.
Johnston?
Yes.
Barrett?
Yes.
Troop?
Yes.
Wee-Smith?
Yes.
Schilling?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
Motion is carried. We go into confidence.
Mr. Mayor, I move the matter be lifted from the table.
Thank you. Councillor De Vries, you're seconding that?
I'm seconding that, yes.
Put the motion. This matter be lifted from the table. Boothby?
Yes.
Angus?
Yes.
Hearn?
Yes.
Havik?
Yes.
De Vries?
Yes.
Johnston?
Yes.
Barrett?
Yes.
Troop?
Yes.
Weiss Smith?
Yes.
Schilling?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
Ms. Thomas, you wanted to make a comment earlier?
Thank you. Yes, through you, Mayor. I really just wanted to put a little bit of further context around some of the comments made during the deputations, and just to reassure elected members that certainly in all the dealings I've had with the family and the neighbours, have certainly tried to respect in a very compassionate and thoughtful manner the emotions involved. And as I say, to reassure that certainly when the initial conversations were had, very much the concern was around the immediate further health and safety risks posed by the proximity of the roadside memorial as it was initially installed, which was right on the side of the road. And when I met with the deceased mother, that certainly was the focus, and coming to some discussion around how potentially that could be relocated and removed, potentially at that time alongside the bench. And I certainly didn't want to go into those discussions waving policy documents around. I wanted to do that in a very considered manner, and that's really what was forefront to me during those conversations. And so whilst I think the statement was made that there were no concerns about the bench, I'd probably just put a little different context around that to say that my immediate concern was around the public health, public safety issues of the memorial as it was originally installed. And then moving on, certainly wanted to provide time to the family to have time, obviously at the very earliest stages of the grief and the grief process, and that's still very much the case, to support them through that process. And additionally, the more people that I spoke to also understand that potentially when you're dealing with trauma and a response to a traumatic event, completely opposite to the grief process, it may seem like weeks and weeks are going past and nothing is happening. So completely different ends of the spectrum in terms of how people may be able to deal with those different emotions. And when we then got to the point where potentially a compromise didn't seem possible, and that was really based on the discussion, rather than just sending out a letter on the 27th of April to the family to say that they hadn't complied, I actually phoned, as elected members I think would expect me to do, and had that conversation. And that was one of many conversations and texts that I had had with the family during that period. So I just really wanted to reassure that certainly, as I say, I wouldn't have just sent a letter out in that manner. I'm encouraged to hear that potentially there is a compromise, but certainly when I had that conversation on the 27th of April, the sentiment that I had at that time was that the family would not be prepared to remove the memorial in its relocated position, and that if council were to remove it, they would immediately reinstate it. So just wanted to put a bit of further context around some of those issues, and that was very much why at that point I decided that I had used my best endeavours and that I would bring the matter back to council at that point. Thank you.
Thank you. Just looking at the list, Councillor Johnston, was that for you earlier or?
Yeah, it's Councillor Havik next.
Councillor Havik,
Earlier,
I think
that was for the.
Yeah, Councillor Havik.
Thank you. Just going on from what Joe has just said, I think that council will need to be reminded, and obviously they will be, when whatever happens down the track, is that we need to have the care and so forth attached to whatever we do. So if the memorial has to be moved or whatever, there could be repercussions there. So not only the people concerned, but through the media. So we need to be aware of that.
Thank you. Councillor De Vries.
He's just on mute.
You're there, David?
Pardon. Sorry, yeah, my microphone again. My thing keeps disappearing off my screen, so I think I'm on when I'm not. Apologies. I'm willing to move this motion. The one area that I have a little bit of concern about is at the end of item 5, where we talk about the addition of the words by the 31st of May 2020. And then we also have that same date in the end of line 7. I was just wondering if it may be prudent to make that just the removal of those dates. So it just be remove the bench from the site and then report to council, with the intention being that we try to aim for the 31st of May, but that that gives Ms. Thomas and the family a little bit further if need be. The reason why I'm thinking that, and I actually would like to move in that direction if I could. So just the removal of the words by the 31st of May 2020, and then and report to council, and then just remove that from by the 31st of May 2020. Oh, sorry, 2021's fine. Beg your pardon.
Misread. That's right. That's right. Yeah. 2021.
Yeah, sorry, I misread that, but I'd like to just remove at the end of item 5 by the 31st of May 2020. I move that way, not to say that it shouldn't be done by the 31st of May 2020, but that just allows a little bit of flexibility. With the removal of these sort of temporary structures, the idea has always been with this council to keep an element of flexibility in the process. We've always suggested that there should be timeframes that are put there as guidelines, because obviously if you don't have any timeframes at all, then there's...
Councillor, I'll just get a seconder first and then let you speak to him.
Sorry. Yep.
Is there a seconder? And that's removing the date.
Yes, yes, I'll second that. I think I've got an ATT there.
Okay, thank you. Councillor De Vries.
Sorry, Your Worship. So yes, the rationale for that is that I agree with everything that we're doing in this recommendation. It's really just to give a little bit of flexibility. The idea behind the policy always was that we were mindful of the fact that people need time to grieve. I'm sure we've all been through processes like this where when tragedy hits you in your life, you feel it very acutely at the beginning, and time does help, and it does help heal. And if time is needed for the family to cope with this process, I think that can be negotiated. Clearly, we've spoken about this before. There is a conflict here between the public need and the private need. And I guess the words that I'd be saying to the family is that we're very sympathetic of their tragedy, and no words can express, how they must be feeling about that. But private grief is private, and there is also the public need here as well. This is causing stress to other members of the public, and I think in their heart of hearts, the family would not like this tragedy to then cause additional grief to other members of the public. I don't think that's the legacy that they would be looking for. I'm very distressed that the emotion and conflict that's been stirred up by the media reports, one would hope that the media would be compassionate in situations like this rather than using it as a vehicle to engender interest, I guess. Again, it feels like there's this conflict between what's in the public interest and what's in the private interest. I just believe that While I'm incredibly compassionate for the family, and a smaller, reduced size of memorial can still allow them to maintain some connection with that space and that area. At the same time, I am very concerned about the stress that this is causing other members of the public, and the fact that the media has been, for want of a better word, exploiting that. Thank you.
Councillor Johnston, you wish to speak to the motion?
I really have a question as well. There is a really substantial memorial sitting on the Williamstown Sandy Creek Road. That is a dip tie road, and it's always been my view that is that a dip tie responsibility, and is that why it's never been removed? It is really objectionable, and it's not pleasant going past it.
Mr. Mayor, we're dealing with that. Anything outside the post will always, dip tie will always say that's our responsibility. We're dealing with that one as well. And
thank you. Thank you. Well.
I would like to pose a question to Ms. Thomas. Just with that time frame, I'm a little bit concerned with and you'd be best to answer, if we don't put some sort of time frame there. I'm just concerned how long this may go on, and whether we are really then dealing with the adjoining neighbours in the manner in which we want to find the compromise, but we also, I'm just worried if there isn't some sort of, even if it's an extra month or something, how do you think you'll feel trying to work your way through this recommendation if there isn't a stipulated time frame, or will it just blow out?
Through you, Mayor, so that was certainly the reason that I put a time frame in there. And certainly the discussions that I'd had with the neighbours, I felt they needed some certainty potentially around that date. It doesn't necessarily have to be the 31st of May, but I think it is important that there is some date in there to work towards.
Thank you. Councillor True.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I mean, this is echoing everyone's sentiments, and I'd just really like to confirm grief and trauma are quite different, and being through a grief and a traumatic situation only a year ago, I know that the ramifications for the whole community is actually quite big, and the family. I have a few. Obviously, we've got to balance all of this out. My few concerns are, number one, there is children involved, and I think children need to be travelled through this very carefully. I mean, it is amazing that they're going to grief counsellors. I think that is a plus, and perhaps a longer time frame could allow, perhaps if we were to remove the pew, that maybe that could allow them time to process with their grief counsellors. But it does concern me that the man, correct me if I'm wrong, was actually from Kersbrook as well. And it's, I mean, that's irrelevant where he's from, but the fact is that wasn't his road, and it is another community's road. But I just think also that perhaps the longer time frame might give the children and the family longer to be able to process that. And and Councillor De Vries is right. Time will be our biggest advantage in this. But I'm just wondering also if the messiness of the situation around that cross, but maybe it could be resolved with even natural seats, even logs that those children can sit on in the meantime, just for the meantime to see them through it. Thank you.
Councillor Angus.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd firstly like to congratulate Jo Thomas on the way she has handled this situation, and obviously has got to the point where it has to be attended to by the entire council. I'm quite happy with the recommendation as it is put forward. I initially thought the 31st of May was a bit tight, and I'd be happy to see that still stipulated to the 30th of June to give them another month. It's the impact on the neighbours that really needs to be taken into consideration, particularly here. And the cross that was made by this person's friends and relatives is a work of art, and that unfortunately no one checked to see whether it was going to have a significant impact on people that use that area a lot. My suggestion, and I think this is what is put into the motion, is that it was reduced to 1 metre squared, and now that's an issue that mathematicians will argue over, and I think the intent was that we meant a cross or a marker shouldn't be more than 1 metre high, and it should be in proportion. So to me, that's 1 metre high and maybe half a metre wide. The metre square is a little bit confusing. In my mind, there is no doubt that cross should be replaced with something approximately half its size. The cross can then be taken to their house or to their cemetery or wherever. The place can still be marked, and the people can still go and pay their respects. But the neighbours do have rights, and I wonder whether that cross, a smaller cross, can be located in a better position so as not to look like a cross from someone's house. It might, if you can look at it side on, it just looks like a post. So that can mitigate the effects of coming out and seeing that symbol every time you come out of your house. So, yeah, look, a very sad and difficult situation, and I think we've just got to make the best of it that we can. The policy does have a 15-month run time, obviously, of which some of that has already elapsed, but that does give people time to grieve, and I think the policy, the recommendation is sound, and I'm very happy to support it. Thank you.
Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Mayor. Keep it brief. I'm going to go about 3 dot points. The first one, thank you to Mr. Joe Thomas. Excellent, and certainly made my job a lot easier. The second point I've got, I'm not in favour of extending the date. Otherwise, it will just be extended and extended. I have great concerns sending it out much further. And the third dot point I've got myself is under 0.6, and it's a pedantic one. I know, but we've got that the instructs officers to remove. Now, we can't do that as councillors, so I'd like to see an amendment made so the CEO instructs the officers under 0.6 of recommendation 3. But as it is, it's a pedantic type one, so that's only the 3 points I've got to make. Thank you.
So was you looking for an amendment to that motion that we've got? Because the motion that I've got at the moment is the 31st of May.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. It's just a legislative correction. So under number 6, technically, Councillor Barrett's right. Council can only instruct me, they can't instruct officers. So really, officers just got to change to CEO.
Okay, thanks.
Your Worship, as the mover of the motion, I'd actually removed the date.
Yes,
so there is no date.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry.
However, however, given what I've heard, if that would cause this motion to be defeated, I am willing to move it out to the 30th of June if that was considered to be a more reasonable time frame. Assuming the seconder was happy with that.
Russell, Councillor Johnson, you were the seconder for memory.
Yes, I'll agree to that change.
Mayor, I've
That's
pushed
now.
the ATT a couple of times.
Beg your pardon?
I
Councillor.
said I've ended ATT a couple of times and haven't had a response.
Still getting to it.
I'm still getting to that. Okay, so with the mover and the seconder, we've gone to the 30th of June because there was a bit of to-ing and froing about not having a sunset date there. So I'll now go to Councillor Hearn, and then Councillor Miller, and then, oh, no, sorry, it is Councillor Haybeck. Sorry, you were first.
Thank you. I just want to agree with what we've said about Councillor Thomas again, and the good work she's done, and how we need to think about the welfare and so forth for all these people. But at the end of the day, if there's not a date there, nothing will ever happen. We need to have dates on everything we do. There has to be a cut-off point. And I believe the date should stay as it is. And I don't want to, I'm not knocking the victims here at all, but this has gone on for a long time now. We need to really hit, not hit, but consider in that light. If we give it another month, it's just another agony of a month for the people who reside nearby.
Councillor Hearn.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Yes, I also like to thank Jo Thomas for the work she's done. I've had death in our family as well, and I can see where everybody is coming from. But I agree with Councillor Habig that there has to be a cut-off point, as Councillor Angus intimated. 30th of June, I'd be more than happy with that. But there's hardships on both sides, and I can see all of those arguments. And we do have I think it's an excellent policy, and because of that policy, if we start twisting and turning, then we'll have the same sorts of things happening the next time there's a tragic accident somewhere. So if we can sort of really just get that message across, which Ms. Thomas has been doing, and I think along those lines, and instructing the CEO to do what we've discussed in the last few minutes is the way we should be going, and I would support the motion on that vein.
Councillor Boothby.
No, Miller.
Oh, Miller, sorry.
Thanks, Mayor. I actually liked the very first recommendation, other than the minor tweaks as far as the officers are concerned, and definitely there must be a finish date. Simple basic law of contract says you must have a finish date, and this is basically a contract. So, and I prefer the 31st of May, and come what may, that's how I intend to vote. Thank you.
Councillor Boothby.
Yeah, I'll be quick. So obviously, again, reiterating what everybody else has said in terms of our sympathy and compassion for the family and friends of John McAlpine, and also with the members of the public and residents who are also dealing with their own trauma associated with this. Obviously, achieving compromise in a situation like this is impossibly difficult, but we have to do that. That's our job. And our job is to care about all of the members of the community, as equally as we possibly can. Our job is to set policy direction, which is what we've done, and to review that policy over time to make sure it's right and move it if it's not. And we also have to apply that consistently. And there's already been cases put forward today where that's not happening. In terms of once we become aware of a roadside memorial, we need to make sure that it does comply with the policy and be consistent. And so in setting that policy, we try and be as fair as we can to all parties involved, and that's what we can that we can do. I reiterate Councillor Troop's comments about there being children involved, of all traumatised people and grieving people. I think we have to put children first. So I guess whatever support we can provide to the staff to resolve this matter as promptly and effectively as possible to manage the emotions and the grief and the trauma of all the people involved, but also really care for our staff who have to implement this and support them however we can. And ultimately that's getting the policy right and being consistent and having to make the hard decisions, which this really is, to actually support something that is, it has an emotional impact, but that's our job. And so I'll be supporting the recommendation with the alteration to change the date to the 30th of June. I think it does give a balanced approach. So thank you.
Thank you, members. Councillor De Vries, do you wish to close the debate?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. There's some, I think everybody seems to agree with all of the points of this recommendation. The issue is really just one of the date. As it currently stands, myself and Councillor Johnson have moved that we've pushed it out to the 30th of June. So I guess if you don't want it to be the 30th of June, you'll be required to vote against this motion and then put up a new motion which says the 31st of May. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. I'll put the motion. Boothby?
Yes, thank you.
Angus?
Yes.
Hearn?
Yes.
Havik?
Yes.
De Vries?
Yes.
Johnston?
Yes.
Barrett?
Yes.
Troop?
Yes.
Wee Smith?
Yes.
Schilling?
Yes.
Miller?
Yep.
Motion is carried. Item 7.3.2.1, community grant applications, Southern Barossa Men's Shed on page 396. Councillor Schilling?
Yes, I'm on the board of the New York for Futures Association, so I'd like to declare a conflict of interest and leave the meeting.
Thank you, Councillor. We'll just wait a while until we do that.
It's the next one.
Awesome.
Wrong one.
Wrong one, Councillor Schilling. Stay there a bit longer. This is Southern Barossa Men's Shed. Councillor Wee Smith.
Sorry, I wasn't sure if I had to leave for all three or just the individual one that it refers to. So my apologies.
Yep, that's fine. Councillor Wee Smith.
Yes, I'd like to move the recommendation with the sum of $5,000.
Thank you. Councillor Boothby.
Happy to support that recommendation.
We have a recommendation to move the grant application with a sum of $5,000. Wish to speak to the motion?
I need to support it. Obviously, I also sit on the CAS committee, and this would be something that would need to come to council anyway. I think the Southern Barossa Men's Shed have shown good initiative in trying to get this project up and running, and yeah, we should support it.
Thank you. Councillor Boothby.
And happy to take it as read. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Any questions, comments? All those in favour? Boothby?
Yes.
Angus?
Yes.
Hearn?
Yes.
Havik?
Yes.
De Vries?
Yes.
Johnston?
Yes.
Barrett?
Yes.
Troop?
Yes.
Wee Smith?
Yes.
Schilling?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
Thank you. The motion is carried. Item 7.3.2.2, community grant application, Williamstown Senior Sits on page 436. Williamstown Seniors, your citizens. Councillor DeBreeze.
Yeah, move the recommendation, Your Worship.
With what figure? What
I'll
figure,
second it.
3,000.
Oh, sorry, 3,000.
3,000.
I'll second it.
And Councillor Johnston, you're seconding? Councillor Wee-Smith.
Yeah, sorry, I thought I'd popped up there first. I actually wanted to move that recommendation with the funds of 5,000.
Oh, sorry, you did pop up first. Anyway, I've taken the other one.
Yep, that's it.
I actually beat Regina's mark. That's why.
Yeah. Okay. We got a figure of 3,000.
Yep, I don't have a problem with it.
You've only got a mover.
I've got a mover and a seconder. Councillor Johnston, you second. 3,000?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
But I'd like to hear the arguments for a higher number.
Okay. Councillor DeRees, do you want to speak to the motion first?
Actually, if we prefer to go to 5,000, I'm happy to change it to 5,000.
Second, are you happy to 5?
Agreed.
Okay.
Joe Thomas and then Councillor Wee-Smith.
Councillor Wee-Smith, you want to speak, and then Ms Thomas.
Yes, I was just going to suggest amending the motion. We're sort of getting to the end of the financial year here, and generally what we do in this committee is we look at the funding that we've got available, and we do have funding available that can cover this comfortably. This group is a very industrious, active group who have been looking to get these works done for some time. I think they've demonstrated, you know, their own willingness to put the work in to get this done. So if we can do it, to me it seems a no-brainer to up that funding.
Thank you, Mr.
Actually, Your Worship, with that in mind, why not muck about and just go to the 5,350? So I'm happy to do that.
Seconder?
Agreed.
Okay. Ms Thomas?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that the actual ex-GST amount is 4,863. So that's the amount. If elected members wish to support the full amount, then we always quote those amounts as ex-GST. So it's actually 4,863. And the rationale was, as Councillor Wee-Smith has said, that it was coming toward the end of the financial year, and it would be sad to have that money left over if there was an opportunity to expend it.
So help me now, is it 5,000 or is it 4,000?
It's 4,863.
Thank you. Okay. We all clear?
All right, then I'm happy with that, if that is the figure.
And I agree.
Thank you. Put the motion. All those in favour? Boothby?
Yes.
Angus?
Yes.
Hearn?
Yes.
Habig?
God's sake, yes.
DeBreeze?
Yes.
Johnston?
Yes.
Barrett?
Yes.
Troop?
Yes.
Wee-Smith?
Yes.
Schilling?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
Motion is carried. Next item is the Newry Futures Associate. 7.3.2.3, page 476. Councillor Schilling.
You're on mute.
I declare a conflict of interest and would like to leave the meeting as I sit on the Europe for Futures Association board.
Thank you, Councillor. We'll just remove you from the meeting.
Yep, go on.
Okay, there's Councillor Wee Smith.
Move the recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Boothby.
Happy to second.
Thank you. Councillor Wee Smith, do you want to speak to it?
No, thank you.
Councillor Boothby.
No, thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Any questions? I'll put the motion. Boothby.
Yes.
Angus.
Yes.
Hearn.
Yes.
Haybick.
Yes.
De Vries.
Yes.
Johnston.
Yes.
Barrett.
Yes.
Troop.
Yes.
Wee Smith.
Yes.
Miller.
Yes.
Motion is carried. We'll now bring Councillor Schilling back into the meeting.
Just need to double check when she's back on.
Are you back in the meeting, Councillor Schilling?
I certainly am, thank you.
Next item is 7.4.1.1, the reassessment of the road classification, Kemp Road, Eden Valley on 510.
Councillor De Vries.
Councillor De Vries.
Yeah, move the recommendation, Your Worship.
Move Councillor De Vries. So second, Councillor Boothby.
She's nodded.
That's a nod.
Yes.
Councillor Haybick, were you just seconding it?
I was.
Thank you. Councillor De Vries, you wish to speak to it?
No, these pop up from time to time and needs to be done. So,
Councillor Boothby?
All good, thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Any questions?
no.
Put the motion. Boothby?
Yes.
Angus?
Yes.
Hearn?
Yes.
Haybick?
Yes.
De Vries?
Yes.
Johnston?
Yes.
Barrett?
Yes.
Troop?
Yes.
Wee Smith?
Yes.
Schilling?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
Motion is carried. Item 7.4.1.2, Kyle Gardens Tanunda, the retaining wall, budget adjustments on 516.
Councillor De Vries.
Councillor De Vries.
Yes, move the recommendation, Your Worship.
Councillor Boothby.
Oh.
Happy to second, Mayor.
Thank you.
Councillor Johnston.
Councillor Johnson, you were just seconding.
Yes.
Councillor De Vries, you wish to speak?
No, I mean, it has to be done. So I think the solution that's come up with is pretty good. So well done.
Thank you. Councillor Boothby.
All good, thanks, Mayor.
Any questions? Put the motion. Boothby.
Yes.
Angus.
Reluctantly, yes.
Hearn.
Yes.
Haybick.
Yes.
De Vries.
Yes.
Johnston. Barrett.
Yes.
Troop.
Yes.
Wee Smith.
Yes.
Schilling.
Yes.
Miller.
Yes.
2 to go.
Item 7.5.4.1, draft mobile food vendor policy and location rules on 5/31.
I'll move the recommendation.
Councillor Johnston, you've moved. And Councillor De Vries?
Yes.
Second.
Councillor Johnson, you wish to speak?
No, I'll take it as read.
Councillor De Vries?
I think the numbers Jamie's come up with are pretty good.
Any questions?
Yes, Mayor. I've got my thing up.
Councillor Hearn?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, speaking to the coffee lady a couple of months ago and just recently, is there any room for paying, say, quarterly or monthly, even though they sign an agreement for the year? She would find that a bit difficult at this stage, having spent a lot of money on generators, etc. That would be a worthwhile option.
My understanding of the recommendation is that there is a monthly fee there, so she could choose to pay $200. Is that correct? Yes, I'm getting a nod.
I guess that adds another $400 to the bill.
That's correct.
I would just think, Mayor, that just seeing as how we're starting off in this area and there is only 2 people involved, there should be some further consideration, but that's only a thought.
Councillor Boothby.
Can I make the suggestion that rather than make representations on behalf of people who benefit from the policy, that that person could actually make a submission as part of the consultation on the policy?
Yeah, look, they're all things, but look, the recommendation we've got before us is pretty clear. I guess I understand what Councillor Hearn is saying, but I think those who've got bricks and mortar are also having some struggles with paying things at the moment too. So, is there any further clarification? Mr. Maverick.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to clarify that the recommendation too is to go out for further consultation. So taking up Councillor Hearn's point and Councillor Boothby's point, members of the community can make those submissions.
Just, Mr. Maverick, I'm sort of reading this as we've done the first phase. Is there another phase? Correct.
Yes. Correct, Mayor. That is Jamie and the Manager of Regulatory Services. I had a chat and we felt that it would be appropriate to go out for further consultation. We only effectively received one submission during the first phase, and given the COVID situation, we thought it was appropriate to go out again.
Thank you. All clear? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Boothby?
Yes.
Angus?
Yes.
Hearn?
Yes.
Haybick?
Yes.
De Vries?
Yes.
Johnston?
Yes.
Barrett?
Yes.
Troop?
Yes.
Wee Smith?
Yes.
Schilling?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
Motion is carried. Next item, 7.5.5.1, Waste Management Service. Grant offers for green industry, page 564.
I'll move the
Councillor
recommendation,
Johnston.
Your Worship. I'll move that way, Your Worship.
Councillor Wee Smith.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Councillor Johnson, you wish to speak to the motion?
Only just to reinforce the views in there about the trend to remove organic waste from the red lidded bins is really important. Not only will it save in terms of mass that we're levied on, but will also dramatically reduce greenhouse gas emissions from those landfills.
Thank you. Councillor Wee Smith.
No, thank you.
Members, any questions? Put the motion. Boothby?
Yes.
Angus?
Yes.
Hearn?
Reluctantly, yes.
Havik?
Yes.
De Vries?
Enthusiastically, yes.
Johnston?
Giggling, yes.
Barrett?
Just a simple yes.
Troop?
Yes.
Wee Smith?
Absolutely.
Schilling?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
I'll get you, Dave.
Members, that's the agenda for today. Next meeting is scheduled for the 16th of June at 9 a.m. and we have a workshop tomorrow night. So with that, I'll close the meeting and thank you for your patience and your input.